Hey, welcome to Versus. Hey, we got a special show. First of all, Chris is not here today, and I'm here as a last-minute replacement. And as I told Chris, Chris needs a girlfriend. Let's just say that. All right. So we're going to talk about the Acolyte. In fact, this is the preview episode of Versus for the Acolyte. Comes out tomorrow. Both Chris and myself have seen the first 4 episodes, and no, we can't say a damn thing about it. But we will tomorrow. Let's just put it that way. But we have guests coming with us, some great guests who are going to talk about what we're in for, what we're looking forward to, and just how amazing this series is going to be. So with that, let's start things off. All right, welcome. Oh, and that damn music. Okay. I want to welcome our guests. Thank you for being here. And let's just go around the horn and introduce yourselves. Derek, let's start off with you.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Derek Anderson, the DA. Shout out to Film Thread once again for bringing me on. Looking forward to the conversation in regards to the wonderful show that we're about to get bestowed upon us tomorrow. The Acolyte should be fun.
All right, Dante.
Hey guys, Dante from Verbal Riot. Always happy to be here. And let's find Chris Gore a girlfriend. Let's make this happen.
All right, Robert.
That's a funny thing to say. Robert Burnett here from the Burnett Work on YouTube, or find me on Instagram at RM Burnett. And I too am looking forward to having this conversation. I like to follow Verbal wherever he goes. I just like the sound of his voice. I really do. And he's the only person in the world I've ever met that loves the Warriors as much as I do. So,
all right, Mike.
Hey, I'm Epic Mike. Epic Mike over on YouTube. I'm also the co-founder of Epicverse, an independent studio. And I'm just glad to be here because, I'm super happy with everything Disney has done with Star Wars. I will be the voice of reason here and talk about how wonderful. I'm just kidding. It's awful. It's all bad. It's all bad.
Yeah, okay, and as they say, ladies last. Nerd cookies.
Hello, I'm Elaine at Nerd Cookies, and I am halfway through a rewatch of Babylon 5, and I'm ready for war.
All right.
You're going to get it.
Well, hey, let's, before we get into the Acolyte, we just need to talk a little bit about business, and let's go over the weekend box office. And I've got the numbers here. Let me change that. All right. So, nothing came out except Young Woman in the Sea last week, and it's not even on the list. In fact, Disney's not even promoting or posting box office numbers for it. So our top 3 movies are Garfield, who's taken over, is now beating Furiosa with 51.5 million versus Furiosa's 49.7, and surprisingly enough, and I've heard this from theater owners, but If is somehow finding legs and is now at 80 million and seems to be the big hit so far of the last month of May and going into June. What were your thoughts about where we're at with the box office?
Well, don't sleep on Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, though.
Yeah, that's the other thing. There was a fight last weekend or this past weekend over the premium format theaters, whether it would go to Furiosa or Fall Guy, and people are saying Planet of the Apes should be in that mix as well.
Yeah, it's doing well. It's past 300 million, and it's closing in on the box office of War of the Planet of the Apes.
I really liked it. That's awesome to see it, that it has legs.
Right, but I'll be honest, I was pleased with all of the May releases that I've seen so far. The box office doesn't seem to be reflecting, these films whatsoever. I liked Fall Guy. I liked Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I liked Furiosa. And it's kind of telling that, everybody else seems not want to go and watch the movies any longer. It's just kind of funny how, even when good films are coming out, nobody's really, checking for the box office.
Well, they didn't even give Fall Guy a chance. 19 days and it hit to streaming. I mean, and it was good. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. and I think it could have had legs. I think it could have done well Memorial Day, but
Especially, it's a really well-made, really fun film. And
Yeah.
it was just a really great time at the movies. And I'm surprised that it didn't catch fire with audiences, or that word of mouth didn't carry it through. I think maybe it was the title, that in these days people don't know what a fall guy even is. Maybe if they'd retitled it, I know it's based on an unknown IP, but when you think about it, we all know, a fall guy, it's a double entendre, as somebody who's going to take the blame for something, and also a stunt man who's literally falling off things. But I thought that the trailers were good. Obviously the cast was good, and that movie really delivered a good time at the movies.
I'm
They have
shocked.
romance, which is not something we see in films a lot lately.
I will say
I'm mostly shocked just because of the fact that Ryan Gosling, who I thought was a pretty hot commodity in Hollywood, especially right off of Barbie, I thought he would at least put some butts in seats, but I was really shocked that The Fall Guy did as bad as it did.
Me too.
Yeah, I think the marketing actually didn't really highlight the romance. I don't think I even knew that it was an action rom-com. I was going in with the impression it was solely action. I didn't know that this was going to be a romance between the two. I don't think the marketing really focused on that, and I think that could have helped it possibly with the female demographic. I don't know, but I think everyone could have had something that they would have liked about it. It really had that mass appeal for all audiences, I thought. So
Yeah,
I don't know if the marketing really did well with that.
I actually agree. I think the marketing for the movie was kind of terrible, because I just don't think they knew exactly who to market this for. But I thought the movie was really fun. I have a particular soft spot for stunt people. I have a really good friend that does stunt work in the industry and stuff, and I appreciate those guys. And it was nice to see them getting their time in the spotlight. But I think this is indicative of, we've all been saying it, I think, audience at some point are going to get frustrated and not want to go see movies. And when studios don't believe in their movies either, because they just want to throw them on the streaming after a couple weeks, I think it just everybody's kind of looking, going, I don't know, maybe it's not worth it, or, I'll just wait for it to come to streaming. And I think that streaming's kind of shot, the theaters in the foot a little bit. So
yeah, even like Wolves, the trailer for Wolves, the Brad Pitt, George Clooney movie, that looked great, and I would definitely go see that in theaters. But it's Apple TV Plus, is where it's premiering.
And it's been a while since I've seen a movie that was just like, hey, we just took these two actors and threw them in a thing together because you guys like how they work together. I think that's a great premise for a movie, and then the premise of the movie is also very interesting. But yeah, when I saw it was Apple TV, I was like, oh great, okay, so not even a reason to go to the theater again. Let's just keep throwing these things on, let's just keep throwing these things on streaming services. It was interesting because at one point I remember Netflix was trying to do a hybrid where they were releasing things in theaters early, and then it would drop on on Netflix. I thought that was a cool way of doing things, and I would love to see more streaming services try to do something like that. Like, let's debut them in theaters, let's see how they do, let's see how the box office does, and then we'll put them on our platform exclusively, instead of physical media. But I just, it just seems like they don't have.
Like, Netflix is doing that with the movie that's about to come out this weekend on Netflix. I think the Hitman with Glenn Powell. Glenn Powell's, I think they got it from the Toronto International Film Festival, and it just came out, in theaters, but nobody saw it because they, I guess, had a limited release. And now they're about to bring it out, on Netflix, and this thing is getting rave reviews. It's got like 90 on both sides.
Richard Linklater directed it.
Yeah.
Linklater is like, why isn't this in theaters? It's like, why is this not a theater movie? Why are they pushing this directly? And I think that's also hurting theaters, is that movies that should be in theaters aren't in theaters. They're pushing them to, Netflix is gobbling these things up and they're throwing them right to streaming, and then they give them like maybe a tiny, little release. I don't know.
I'll say this about Netflix. I talked to a former Star Wars director who has certain movies on Netflix right now. And he told me that Netflix believes the theater is cannibalizing their business, and he was pretty frustrated the fact that his movies aren't coming to the theaters where it should be, but that it's going direct to streaming, and there's no indication that Netflix is changing that.
Well, Toxic Waltz
Wow.
points out that they did surprise drop Godzilla -1 on streaming, and Godzilla -1 and Godzilla -1 -0 also dropped on all VOD services, sort of out of the blue.
Yeah.
And I think that what's really interesting about all of this is it used to be that movies had a certain life cycle. They would go out theatrically. They would do whatever they did theatrically. Then they would go to home video. Then after home video, they'd go to cable. There wasn't a VOD back then. But what our modern age is missing, if a movie goes direct to streaming and you spend $150 million making it, or $200 million like a Red Notice, or $220 million like a Gray Man, that $220 million evaporates into the ether if it goes direct to streaming. There's no opportunity for that film to earn any money back, because the only revenue stream that Netflix has is subscribers.
Mhm.
So everything that's on their system or on their service has to be paid for by subscriptions. And there's only a finite amount of households on the planet Earth that can eventually be subscribers. So this idea that they constantly want to make it a growth business is silly. And the idea that they want to eliminate theatrical, which not only does it pay for the cost of the film being made, but anything that goes theatrical that does well, when that movie comes on to streaming, it already has the cachet of being a hit.
Come on.
So
Bingo.
people want it on your streaming service. And it has been proven time and again that the movies that do well theatrically do better on streaming services.
Yep.
And when they undercut the theatrical business, they're literally cutting the legs out of the it'd be like taking childhood away and expecting children to still be okay at 15 if they never had the first 14 years of life where they could develop. I mean, maybe that's a bad analogy, but that's what they're doing to movies. Movies don't have a chance to be born, to grow up, to become a success, and then go to streaming. And then when they took away the importance of home video and then went straight to VOD or digital, they didn't take any lessons from the music industry. And so these films that cost an incredible amount of money to make, they never recoup anything. And I don't understand how that's a sustainable business model.
Yeah. Didn't
Yeah,
you post a
even-
video of someone
You're right.
saying that that the top 10 movies on Netflix were all theatricals?
Yeah.
That they weren't the originals? I mean, imagine if Atlas had hit theaters.
Yeah, and even successful movies like Doom Part 2 hit streaming on digital in 6 weeks. So, and that could have it was showing really good legs, and it was tracking along like Oppenheimer, and I think it could have gotten to 900 million, close to $1 billion, if it was able to play in theaters solely for like several months or all.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just undercut. And I think even a successful film like that is also contributing to this problem.
But it also might be an issue of fool me once, right? I think there's been just so much garbage lately that people are hesitant, man, to take a risk, man. Because let's be real here, movies aren't cheap. You know, it's
That's
especially if you're taking a date, right? That's $40 just for the tickets right there, right? So people are less inclined to take a risk now because there's been so much garbage that when there is a good movie, they want to wait a few weeks to hear word of mouth, like, hey, is this worth investing into? So there's your box office right there. There's your weekend. People are waiting to see or hear if it's a good movie or not.
Yeah, I think low key they're also training the audience to just wait for streaming when they push things that fast to streaming. Hey, you know what, you guys, it'll be on streaming in a couple of weeks. Don't worry about it, you know. And then when you have Netflix buying up all kinds of good movies and they're throwing those on the streaming, so it's like, okay, so now what is Hollywood or what are the theaters? It's for like big event films, like, and that's it. And so then, okay, is Fall Guy a big event film? No, not really. Okay, so I can skip that. What about Planet of the Apes? Well, maybe, all right, I might go and check that. What about Furiosa? Will I go and check that? Is that a big event film? And that's kind of the issue, is that everything is coming around these blockbusters. And if it's not a blockbuster, and if it's not an event film, and it's not something that makes me say, oh, okay, everybody's going to be talking about this, I got to go out and watch this weekend one. If it's not that kind of movie, then I'm probably going to skip it, or I'll just wait for streaming because it'll be on streaming in a month.
But
So I
it
think
also
that's a
it also
big
leads
issue.
back it leads back into the economy, right? Because again, people just can't afford to keep dropping money like this, especially for something bad.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just
yeah,
to
but see, the
piggyback
thing
off
is,
of just to piggyback off of Derek,
Yeah.
blockbusters also rely on repeat viewings.
Yep.
Right.
And if it goes, right now, if you can get them into the theater, to get them to see it again is just as difficult, because they know in a few weeks they could just watch it at home.
Yeah, well, because it used to be, you watch a movie in the theaters, and then there was like sometimes a 6-month gap, maybe not as long, sometimes 3 months, and you couldn't see it anywhere until it came out, on physical like media. I would love to see. I think it would be great to say, yeah, we're going to release a movie in theaters and let there be a gap where you can't just watch it immediately on streaming. But if Netflix, because I argue that they're probably going to be around the longest as other streaming platforms start to drop off or disappear or get consumed by other streaming platforms. If Netflix thinks that theaters are competition, then they're going to do everything they can to undercut the theater experience. And that's unfortunate. But I also think that people in the movie going experience was really tainted anyways, because at one point, and I've talked about this on this stream before, with Marvel and the way with the way Disney was doing things, you'd have 2 Pixar movies in a year, you'd have 2 to 3 Marvel movies in a year, you'd have a Star Wars movie in a year. Like, there were so many things that you had to go see in theaters that it almost got to the point where going to the theater was just like, it wasn't special like it used to be. It was like, okay, yep, we're gonna go to the theater this week because we got to go watch the newest this, or we got to go watch the newest that, instead of like, oh my gosh, this movie, like we saw with like Oppenheimer and the Barbie movie. Those were event films. People wanted to go see them, and then word of mouth was like, you have to go see this in theaters. We're not getting that kind of talk about other films anymore, and it's really unfortunate, because I love going to the theater, but it also is very expensive. My wallet does not love going to the theater. So, yeah.
Well, Rob, you had posted this up on X a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember the name of the guy, but you had posted up a guy who basically said, if you focus so hard on making blockbusters or making movies that only are focused on making money and you're not taking risks, you're basically making the theater going experience culturally irrelevant. Like, people don't care about the theaters like they used to, because the films are just, hey, it's just sequels, it's just reboots, it's just big blockbuster events. And these smaller films are just getting lost in the sauce. Like, nobody's going to see these smaller films. I think that's the big issue, is that we need to start seeing more of a variety of films, and less, not to say that you can't make a blockbuster. Obviously you can, but at some point in time, like, the movies are becoming culturally irrelevant because you're only making blockbusters and that's all you're getting in theaters, versus say, okay, we get a variety of things in the theaters. Now we get a lot of comedy. We don't see comedies anymore. We get a lot of different types of films. And I think there's somewhere in the Hollywood, ecology, a sweet spot of so many blockbusters, so many just regular run-of-the-mill type of films that touch everybody across the cultural landscape. And the more we start getting those films, I think the theaters will start to improve and things will come back. But if everything is just the blockbuster, or the main, movie going fare is just big movies, big events, Marvel, a princess movie from, Snow White or whatever, remakes, if that's all we're getting, then that's all people are going to come and watch. And then Fall Guys going to fall through the cracks. Planet of the Apes may or may not hit, depends. I think that's really the issue right now. When it comes to Hollywood, is that there's just not a lot of variety out there, for folks to watch, and then everything is, really centered around streaming, and just get everything to streaming as quickly as possible.
They've also, the problem with Hollywood I see as being the largest problem, is they stopped making movies. This is going to sound strange, but for the domestic audience. They can only make movies that now appeal to a global audience, and they have to make things that comedies they don't make anymore because they don't travel internationally. Comedy is very colloquial. What's funny in your country doesn't mean necessarily it's not funny in another country. So comedies were not like worldwide hits anymore, where before you think, like, I remember when I was a kid in junior high and high school, I would go see like Tootsie or Arthur, and these were really smart, funny comedies that weren't just comedies, but they worked as legitimate movies. I mean, Tootsie is a really wonderful film. It was nominated for Best Picture. And nowadays we have no variety of film. It's almost like the studios are only making movies that we've heard of before. And then when something like Fall Guy comes out and it doesn't do well, but see, this is where I would say that the marketing, you need to come in and figure out. It used to be the filmmaker would make a movie and the marketing department would have to figure out how to market it. Now a lot of the marketing departments don't know what to do unless they've seen something they can copy. Like, oh, this movie's like that, so we have to market it like this. Whereas the creative impulse behind marketing is no longer there. And I think one of the real problems with Hollywood in general is the fact that our culture has shifted, and movies just don't. I mean, movies used to be the end all; they were the pinnacle of entertainment. I mean, we didn't have destination television like we have now. I mean, I think that for dramas and long form storytelling, television has supplanted the movies. Seldom do you get a movie going experience that is as emotional as whether you're watching Succession, whether you're watching House of the Dragon, take your pick, whatever is your favorite streaming show. You have far more emotional fulfillment from that show, which didn't used to be the case. I mean, Hacks, the last season of Hacks just ended. That's a really great show. It had a great ending of a third season and a much more satisfying time. And I think that's what people have become used to. They're not being emotionally fulfilled or satisfied at the cinema the way they used to be. They get the spectacle, and this is all nice, but it kind of leaves me empty at the end of the day. I want those movies that I watched over and over. And we all have them. I mean, I bet if I asked any one of you, what are your top 5 favorite comfort food movies that you could watch at any time, you would have them. And I don't think there's been movies like that. There you go. If some 8-foot-tall monster has your favorite head up against a barroom wall and says, "If you paid your dues, DA,
checks in the mail."
Yeah, that's right. See, everyone knows. And that movie's from 1986.
And just by saying that, I knew exactly what you were talking about. Just saying those words.
I just took my daughter to see the Muppet movie yesterday. And she just absolutely fell in love with it. And to me, it was like to watch that on the big screen with her and not on television was an event for the both of us. And it was, this is what fathers
It still works. That movie's over 40 years old.
Oh yeah, that's what's surprising too. Is now we've seen like some re-releases doing extremely well at the theaters that people have seen before, because people are like, oh my gosh, this reminds me of a time, or oh man, if you didn't get to see this in theaters, you have to go see it in theaters. It's just not the same. But like you said, yeah, we don't have that kind of that same attitude anymore, that same feeling about movies anymore. And part of it is, once again, it's when you become risk averse, you just take whatever the lowest hanging fruit is and go, okay, we'll just try to market this to as many people as possible. And if you try to make everything to all people, it just rings hollow to, instead of making things for people, you go, okay, I know this movie will resonate with this group of people, or I know a good comedy will resonate with these kind of people, But once again, too, and without getting too into the weeds with it, if your whole goal is to make as much money as possible and not to entertain people, then eventually people will go, I'm not being entertained, and I don't want to give you my money anymore.
Yeah. All right. This is a great segue to our next topic, but let's get to the chat first. First of all, from Lord Thoth, like, share, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. Sign up as a member and join us on Discord and Rumble. Buy our merch. Yeah, we have some great merch.
Lord Thoth.
Yes. Let's see. From Dark Sith 87, member for 19 months. Thank you for your support. Is Chris having a stroke? Giggity. Chris is having a bad quarter. Let's just say that. From Latino Slant for 199. Furiosa sucked butt. I don't remember that scene, by the way. DA, hey panel. I'm going to skip the Acolyte questions for the moment. From Stubble McShave for 50 Swedish krona. It seems like many people go to the movies where they know what they're going to get. Very few go to the cinema to be surprised by a movie now. Yeah, you just don't show up and say, or the idea of, hey, let's go to the movie. That's not in our mindset anymore. From Jeremiah Hembry for $5, movie budgets need to be under 95 million. Oh, it could be lower than that too.
Yeah.
And then
Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
And look at how much money that movie made.
Yeah, and it was a day-and-day release. It's on Peacock and in theaters at the same time.
Godzilla -1.
Godzilla, talk to me. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
From Dutchie for 10, I would gladly wait an extra month for streaming. I personally enjoy watching films at home rather than going to the theaters, especially the way people have been behaving and I can pause the movie. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, let's just go with that and go into our next topic. This is from Red Letter Media. I'm just going to show the first. They opened with an interesting clip. If I can get this up here. Here we go. And I just want us to respond to it. Add to stage. There we go. And just going to do 2 minutes of this. And there we go.
Cinemark Century San Francisco, the movie theater at the downtown Westfield Mall, will have its final showings tomorrow during the matinee.
Ahead of a big weekend at the box office, one of the last movie theaters in Ashtabula County has shut down.
Regal Cinemas may close all of its theaters here in the U.S., including 8 here in San Diego County, as soon as this week.
Paragould Cinema 8 is set to close on this Thursday.
The Regal Jewel. Fox 44's Renato G stopped by the establishment one last time on its closing day.
A movie theater chain in the East has announced they will be closing its doors soon.
It is the end of an era here in Claremont. The city's only movie theater is shutting down.
Moviegoers making their final trip to the Regal Moline Theater. After today, it's going dark.
But now, New Haven's only movie theater set to close next month.
And the lights will dim at an Eastern Carolina theater for the final time tonight, leaving the community without a place to watch a movie on the big screen. The next closest location is more than 70 miles away. And in fact, if you want to go to any theater, you'd have to either leave the county or cross state lines.
Sad news for movies out in Johnston. The AMC Theater has permanently closed.
For many here in Chesapeake, they remember seeing their favorite movie posters lining the Regal Cinemas here at Greenbrier. But now, like the rest of the theater, these displays sit empty.
A former movie theater in the St. Andrews area in Columbia will soon be a church.
It's set to close next month.
Closing its doors after Thursday.
It will be closing down after today.
Closing its doors.
And abruptly closed.
It's hard to believe.
That, more than anything, is a sign of the time.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Reactions.
Sad to see, man. It's sad to see. I talked about that on my show a couple of weeks ago with Sari Cohen, and it's sad, but not surprising, considering how things have been lately when it comes to just the movie. Like I said, kids aren't going to movies anymore, man. Teenagers aren't going to movies anymore, right? They're on TikTok, they're on YouTube, they're on Twitch. They're not doing that, and these studios aren't making movies for adults anymore. So add the economy to that. You know, none of this is surprising, but it is disappointing.
Yeah, it's very sad.
Yeah.
Very sad. I did watch a little bit of this. It's pretty sad.
I think it speaks to overall our culture. I mean, we're in the midst of a monstrous cultural sea change in terms of what's important to us, in terms of our emotional well-being. I mean, movies used to bring you went to movies because they made you happy. I mean, that was kind of going to the whole cinema experience. You would see something that was thought-provoking, it was emotionally engaging, you had something, you got something out of it. Sometimes it changed your life. And I don't think anybody thinks, especially younger people, that that's what the movies do now. No one is watching a movie and having it change their lives the way a lot of us did. And that's why I think video games have supplanted that in the minds of young people. I mean, look, I love a great video game. When I got to the end of Ghost of Tsushima, I thought, oh man, I've accomplished something. This was an amazing experience. I'm the protagonist. I went through feudal Japan. I had this incredible time. And I was the protagonist. Whereas movies are passive. You're passively watching something, and you need to be trained how to watch a movie. From the time you're a little kid, you learn how to watch. You learn how to see layers of meaning. You know, you watch, like Chris is always talking about, a movie diet, your media diet. You have to have a well-balanced media diet to really understand media. Just like people, I've given people comic books that never read comic books before, and they don't know how to read them. Yeah, they're like, I don't understand the medium. And I think because we've only had blockbuster films for the last 2 decades, really, that people never grew up finding other value in films. Not en masse. And I don't know how to change that. I've said for a long time that we live in the post-cinema age, as much as I'm loath to admit it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like for my daughter, the only reason she sees movies is because of me. In fact, I have to drag her to movies nowadays, and now it's the job. My job is basically find the movies that will appeal to her. And it was weird, but I took her and her boyfriend to see. Last year, I took her to see The Holdovers, American Fiction, and most recently took him to see Unsung Heroes. And and it's the reaction that the both of them had was, "Wow, that was incredible," or "Thank you for taking us to see this movie," because I can damn well tell you their friends aren't seeing these movies. Iron
Right.
Claw is another one, but it's the way I see it is I have to teach her about movies. I have to teach her the power of movies and why movies are so why it's such a medium that can really grab you emotionally, mentally, and it's I'm teaching her, as opposed to before when it was just something we all did and took for granted.
Yeah.
Well, again, like I said, it's not culturally relevant, especially at that age. They
Yeah.
just don't care.
Mhm.
They're not
They
watching
don't.
movies. They're not going to movies. They're going on everything else. Okay. My kids are into anime. You can see by my background, this is what my kids love. They love anime, and they can talk to you for hours upon
Yeah.
hours about anime, and they'll never shut up. Okay. And then they'll introduce me to a new anime that I haven't heard of or haven't seen. And I think that's another part of it is that, anime, in my opinion, is similar to what we got in the 80s, where everything is kind of new, different. There's, different mediums, there's different, storylines, nothing's repeated. There are some derivatives, but it's not, the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah.
You get different types of stories. And we're, again, like Rob's saying, we're just getting blockbusters for the last 2 decades. So after you get your fill of blockbusters, you're going to want something else. And if the movie theaters are really not promoting that, or really not offering you a lot of that, and everything is just about, hey, Marvel, it's about, a reboot of an 80s, TV series, and there's a $200 million budget behind it. At what point in time you know what? I'm good. I'm just going to go ahead and check into the stuff that my friends are into. My friends aren't watching this, and this isn't really interesting to them. It's not interesting to me. So why am I going to come back to it? I'm just like you, Alan. I've been trying to get my kids to go to movies, and they don't want to go. It's like, hey, I asked them this weekend, hey, do you guys want to go see what was the horror movie In a Violent Nature? Hey, you guys want to go and check that out? Nope. It's like, and they're horror fans, and they're like, nah, I'm good. I'll see it later, Dad. Don't worry about it. It's like, okay, So I think, we just got to get more variety of films that people all can. It's not just Marvel, because they'll go to a Marvel movie, but they will not go see just your average film that's out there.
But another thing, youth culture used to be defined by film, clothes, music. If a film, had a certain kind of music in it, like John Hughes movies, they had great soundtracks, and he was on the cutting edge of a lot of European bands or independent bands we hadn't heard before. Nowadays, kids are going to the immediacy. I mean, movies takes years to make a movie, and you can go to social media and find out trends have come and gone. There's been 100,000 memes that have come and gone before one movie is made. So by the time a film hits the marketplace, which was decided upon by whatever trend they wanted to explore, that trend has come and gone. Pop culture used to linger for a lot longer than it does now. Instead of months or years, pop culture exists for sometimes minutes before it's out of there. And I don't think, as far as youth culture is concerned, movies are completely irrelevant.
Yeah, I definitely think Hollywood shouldn't. I think this is a huge lesson for them, that they shouldn't take for granted that just because it's a familiar brand or IP, that they will assume that people will watch it or come to watch it. And they need to entice the audience. They need to create something special. So it really puts a lot of pressure, and I think deservedly so, where we are now with Marvel and other big IPs, that they need to create something and entice us to come to the theaters to watch it. And they just haven't been doing that. And it's helped contribute to this apathy of going to the theaters. Like, if you're going to watch mid-content, that's what you're going to get mid-month.
It's all sequels. It's all prequels. It's all the stuff we've all seen before. We've seen all of this stuff. So why do I need to watch it again? You know,
That's
it's
just
no coincidence that Furiosa is a prequel to a movie and it's not doing well. And then the Planet of the Apes, although a sequel, and I think it's a damn good movie, it's not doing very well because people have like, yeah, I've already seen that, you know? So, you know, when are we going to get some original, you know, creative films where Hollywood is willing to take some risks? They're not just going to, you know, rest on their laurels and do what's comfortable and do what's easy and do what has already been proven. It's like, okay, you're going to have to risk it and roll the dice and hope that you know, make some money. And I've been saying, instead of spending $250 million on one film, spend $25 million on 10 movies and then see if you can get something from that. And one of those or two of those or three of those are liable to take off. And now you got a new franchise, and then maybe you can build from there. But, you know, just to keep making constant reboots. I mean, I'm tired of it. And I listen, I love the old school stuff, but I am so tired of reboots over and over again, or sequels or prequels or crossovers. All of this stuff is just lame. This is not what Hollywood used to do, you know? Like this guy right here used to actually create stuff. I don't know how many sequels John Carpenter did. I don't think he did that many. I think he did maybe one sequel.
He did one sequel.
Sequel.
He produced Halloween 2, but he directed Escape from LA.
And that was it. Everything else, They Live, he never tried to do a sequel to They Live. He never did a sequel for this. You know, he just continued to crank out original ideas. And that's what Hollywood is missing. Originality.
I think it would be a mistake not mention that. Another thing that's hurt, and it's something we haven't even brought up yet, something that's really hurt the industry really is how politicized Hollywood has gotten and filmmaking has gotten. Right? People are actors who talk way too much, directors, producers who feel it's okay to you know, humiliate a certain like part of the country. This is what's hurting Hollywood, man. Yeah. It's not just the fact that, yeah, you know what, sure, times are hard, sure, the economy's bad, right? But usually when the economy's bad and times are hard, people want that escape. They want to go out and forget that the world sucks, right? The problem is that these actors, these producers, these directors, these studio heads feel it's okay, right, to make everything political when it comes to their movies, and therefore they're alienating a big part of their base, of the audience base that would normally go support these movies.
Another thing too,
my only link to the youth is through my daughter, and they don't watch us. They don't watch YouTube. They don't watch us people. They watch YouTube, but they don't watch, you know, our crowd, the Fellowship, and everything. And when I ask her, why don't your friends like movies, they'll just repeat everything we've said, even though they've never heard any of us talk about it, because they understand what good storytelling is, what bad storytelling is. The other day she was just telling me she's just tired of female-led action movies. You know, she'd like to see a man once in a while lead an action movie. You know, and it's just, again, they're not watching us. You know, it's not like we're subliminally throwing our messages into their heads. They see it, they know it, and they're not going to this. They're not going to these movies.
You know, it's funny. The other day I watched Pump Up the Volume. Alan Moore's Pump Up.
Love that movie. Love that movie, man.
Slater and Samantha Mathis, and you know, Happy Hard Harry, the pirate DJ. I mean, that was like a precursor to what the internet has become. And one of the things about movies like that, or movies like The Breakfast Club, these were movies that were being made by astute adults who were. And Alan Moyle, the director of Pump Up the Volume, had also made like the Empire Records. So he was more of an alternative John Hughes kind of a character, but they were making movies that appealed to teens, that had something to say about teen life. And even those, you know, teens will watch something like 13 Reasons Why, and it'll become a huge hit because that show was speaking to them. When was the last time someone made an actual film that was directed at the teen audience that was elevated material? I mean, even something like Less Than Zero in 1987, based on Freddy's and I mean, yeah, for those coke-addicted Beverly Hills kids, but you know, that was 1987. And where's the John Hughes of today? Well, and you know, they've all gone to streaming, but streaming is there's not one place anymore where kids look other than maybe Taylor Swift. There's nowhere.
Well,
there's no one hotel. That's where they're at.
Well, and DA kind of mentioned it, that they're flocking to anime. And you know why? And I'm going to keep harping this drum. Anime makes things for genre and by demographic.
Yep.
Shonen is designed for teenage boys. It's arguably one of the most popular markets also within that. But they don't go, oh, wow, this is other people are watching this too. Adults are watching this. We need to make it more adult. We need to make it appeal more. They just go, this is what it is. This is this is slice of life. People, adults like this kind of stuff. This is for girls. This is for, and they make this stuff for their demographics. And if they resonate with other audiences, then even better for them. But the reality is like that they're taking all of that. They're soaking up these markets. I mean, we watched, I think it was in 2020 when Demon Slayer came to theaters. It was one of the highest grossing movies of 2020. Huge, because people are like, oh my gosh, I get to go watch anime in the theater. Like, this is crazy. Once again, they're showing people how it's done, which is stop trying to appeal to mass audiences, make movies that groups of people like to watch, make more romances that women want to go see, make more action films that young men and young boys and even older men want to go see. Stop, get back to making cool westerns that people want to see. I mean, the thing is, like, it's just about how can we make as broad of an appeal, and also how can we push a message, or how can we push an ideology? How can we reflect the world around us? And nobody wants to see that anymore. And then anime is like, what if, like, I don't know, some guy found a magical sword and then just like killed a bunch of monsters, and people are like, I love it. Like, I'll keep watching this, or I can't wait to watch more of what's happening.
Our theater over the weekend was loaded with teens watching Haiku, an anime about volleyball.
That was the number 5 film of the weekend.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'll tell you something. That's a great point you just made, because even if you look at movies like Weathering with You or Your Name, or Belle or Suzume or whatever, these feature films that have come out from Japan, these animated films, they have far more emotional resonance and far more connection with the young audience now than anything Hollywood's putting out.
Yeah.
And some of them are very Baroque. I mean, an idea that the different doors you walk through take you to different realms and you get unstuck in reality and all this. People get it. People understand. And kids today are finding nothing relevant in movies. And that's where your core movie going begins as a youth. My parents would take me to see the Herbie movies or Treasure of Matacumbe or Jodie. To me, my first Jodie Foster movie was Candle Shoe, not Taxi Driver.
I love Candle Shoe.
Candle Shoe's amazing. And I saw that in a theater because I would go see anything in a movie theater, and now kids don't have that. What are they going to see?
My mom introduced me to that. That actually reminds me of what kind of the antithesis of what Kathleen Kennedy just said was that every story needs to represent everybody. I forget her exact wording, but it was something like that. And that was her most recent quote. And it's just, stories shouldn't exclude anybody, I guess, in that way. I don't know if that's what she meant to say, but like sci-fi stuff just generally appeals to a certain demographic, I guess. The majority of men and boys love space opera stuff. It doesn't mean that women can't enjoy it or that girls don't enjoy it. It's just certain genres appeal to certain people that you could just be fans of that. So if you're in a certain genre, your job should be to appeal to fans of that genre. That should always be your goal from the outset. If you're going to create a story, you have to know what audience you're creating it for, that that they're going to like and support. And if it's a good story, it appeals to everyone. But if you're going in with a certain kind of point of view, as this has to represent everyone with that sort of pandering point of view, then you end up pleasing no one. And no one will support it in the end, because they can tell you're pandering, and they don't like being pandered to. Kids don't like being pandered to, and women don't like it. It just is what it is.
Yeah, Barbenheimer is a great example of that. There's a giant pie in 2023, and there are 2 slices, and it fed both slices and made a lot of money, and it wasn't trying to reach everybody.
And that was a $2.5 billion win
for a movie that came for 2 movies
for 2
movies
on
the same weekend.
And I'll tell you something else. I just said Candle Shoe, and you knew what I was talking about. I mean, I would assume quite a bit older than you, but when I went and saw Candle Shoe, I knew I was going to see a movie about a girl, a girl going to have an experience with her family, you know, and maybe inheriting some money, and there's a mystery involved. I never thought to myself, I don't want to go see that because it's got a female protagonist. I wanted to see that movie. That movie looked like it had an interesting story. And I never once and I saw that movie when I was a kid, you know, probably in my 9 or 10. I don't know when it came out, but that's how old I was. And I didn't sit there and go, I'm not going to go see that because it's about a girl. It looked like an interesting story. And I wanted to find out what happened. The marketing got me, and I'm like, I want to know what the secret is. I want to know what she finds at this mansion and what is her grandmother or aunt hiding. You know, and that's what they've forgotten how to do. They've forgotten how to appeal to the fact that human beings are curious about how stories unfold and how they end. And that's what movies used to do, was they would market a story, and you wanted to know, like, oh, I got to see that. I have to know what happens.
But that's also because back then, you know, movies, there was no checkbox, right? You didn't have to check a box to make sure that you hit every quota before you made art, right? I said it yesterday, Robert, on the show that we were on, that, you know, my favorite story growing up, my favorite story of all time is Alice in Wonderland, right? You know,
right,
I'm a black dude from the hood, right? And my favorite story is about this little white girl who goes on this crazy mushroom trip, right? So, but you get what I'm saying? It's these executives who are making these decisions, right? Like they're instead of the artists making their art and these executives doing their job and just pushing that art out there, the executives are trying to make the art, and they suck, and they suck because they're not artists.
Yep.
But
they're trying to make money. That's what they're trying to make. They care about the bottom line. They care.
No. They don't care about the money. They care about the message and the agenda. They don't care about money anymore. Disney's
you're right about that. I'm referring to like the constant focus on the big films that they make. But you're right. Yeah, they do focus on, you know, the agenda. That's definitely a part of it. But I think they're not allowing creatives to create. In other words,
no, they're not
saying, hey, this is what we're making. We're doing X amount of reboots, X amount of sequels, and this is what's chasing people out of theaters. This is why nobody's going back to the movies.
Dude, if you're Disney, how do you hire a guy like Sam Raimi and not just let him off the leash and do his thing? How do you not? I'm watching my language, Alan. I'm watching my language. How do you not let
45 minutes?
him,
I think
how do you not let Sam Raimi be Sam Raimi?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I want to go back here,
and that's a crime that this guy is working in your studio, and you can't get anything out of this guy. That's absolutely ridiculous, man.
But I Verbal, your point about Alice in Wonderland, the great stories like that. I mean, a great literary work by Lewis Carroll. There's a whole pantheon, there's its own canon, if you will, of Alice in Wonderland.
Absolutely.
I mean, that is one of the obviously Disney made a certain version of that film.
Which I liked.
Yeah, absolutely. And but the thing is, they don't even know in their thinking that story is appealing to everybody.
Yeah.
Because of the quality of story that it is. And I don't think any of us growing up ever thought to ourselves, well, it's this particular content that I'm attracted to. We would watch something if the story was good. And I literally would watch. I went and saw my mom took me to see Norma Ray, which is a famous Sally Field. She plays a union organizer. I mean, I was probably a kid when it came out. I just went and saw all movies, but
we liked her in that movie. We really liked her.
We did. We really liked her. But when my mom wanted to go see Norma Ray, I didn't say to her, I'm not going to go see a movie about a female union organizer. And at that time, there was no internet. I couldn't go. I went because my mom wanted to go see the movie, and I knew that there was something in it that she found interesting. I'm like, I'm going to go check that out. And it turned out I love that movie. That movie was today. That movie, people would say, like, no one would go see that. They wouldn't even make that movie today. And yet I went as a kid. My mom took me, and I had a great time with her. And I would not have gone. And that was the thing. If the stories are good, it doesn't matter what color the protagonist is, what their sexuality is, what their religious preference is. If the story's good, people will watch.
Oh man, Dog Day Afternoon. You know, Al Pacino, he played a gay guy, man. And did that take away from people loving that? Absolutely not. Everyone in my family saw that movie twice in the theater.
Yeah. How about, you know what? The first time I ever encountered a trans character that I loved, played by John Lithgow, in The World According to Garp. And to this day, The World According, directed by George Roy Hill, who directed And there's a character who someone is performing fellatio and there's a car accident and somebody has their junk removed, and John Lithgow has one of the great lines in movie history. He says, well, I had mine surgically removed, but to have it bitten off. I've never forgotten that line.
I still cringe at that scene.
I know. And it's a great movie. And did anybody have a problem with John Lithgow playing that role? He was great in that role. You love that character. And that was what, 82? Maybe? I mean, we don't get any of that. You tell a good story, you can put anybody in the world in it, and people will go. People will come, Ray.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like people don't look at you funny when you bring up a movie that doesn't make, like, nobody's batting an eye going, oh, you like Alice in Wonderland? That's weird. We go, yeah, I get it. It's a good story. Like, you know, you go, you know, like you talk about other movies and you go, yeah, I saw this or I saw this, and people go, yeah, no, that movie's great. I get it. Like, why, you know, why I don't have to look at you funny. But like nowadays, you know, the attitude is, no, this movie isn't made for you. That we've heard that a lot recently. This movie isn't made for you. Okay.
Garp was 82. Just throw that out there.
But like, you know, you go, okay, this movie isn't made for you, and then alienate the audience. But then the audience that does go see that movie, they don't like it either because it's just not good. You know, so then it's like, so then what are you doing? You know, it's funny because I actually went back, one of my favorite movies, one movie I really like, and I watched it with my wife recently, was My Best Friend's Wedding. And now that I'm like more on the filmmaking side of things, I watch movies now with like the curtain pulled back, and I watch like the camera angles and watch how they do certain things. And I was telling my wife, I was like, they don't make movies like this anymore.
Nope.
Like, you can see just even the subtlety and the cinematography and stuff. And once again, here's a character about a woman in love with a man who's like trying to break up their wedding, and her best friend's a gay guy, and like none of that. They didn't need to market it that way. They weren't screaming about it and telling everybody, well, if you don't go watch this movie, you obviously hate women or you obviously hate gay. None of that. It was just a good movie. It was a very interesting cast of characters, and they just kind of nailed it. You know, and you're like,
I know,
man,
Mike, but who's chasing you? That's what I want to know. We need to move on to talk about a more joyous topic. But I want to thank the 4,000 people watching us right now.
Wow.
Talk about these things, because we know why you're really here. You're here for the better topic. But before we do, let's go to our chat. Let's see, Andrew Cram. 10 euro super sticker. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate the support. From Lance Goodthrust for 5. You guys spent way too much time talking, too much time on the superhero shit. And I'm glad these theaters are failing. Let's understand, it's not the theaters we're glad are failing. It's Hollywood that we're glad is failing. The theaters are owned by mom and pop people like you and me. For Michael, is that Nemo? Yeah, Michael Nemo for 5. Most interesting red letter point for me is clumping movie theaters with cemeteries, beauty pageants, and circuses as outdated yet still around somehow. That's a sobering thought. Dark Sith 87 for 10. Thank you. Ironically, inexperienced young people have chipped down the pillars of entertainment. They buckle under pressure of virtue signaling and give other young people reasons to tune out and drop out. Yeah.
Well, the young people, I would say the young people in cinema are just being trained wrong, because they're being told, now that you have this platform, it is your duty to represent your demographic. It's your duty to talk about unrepresented classes and people, and they put this like weight on these young people that are just trying to learn the ropes, learn how to do things. And when you put that kind of pressure on people, it's like no wonder they're buckling. They don't have any experience to fall back on and go, no, that's not right, because they've never been put on that grand of a stage before. It's like throwing them out there in the deep end and going, if you don't swim, like, you know, you're killing people, you're harming people by not talking about it, not making a big deal about it.
We've conditioned them to be offended by the smallest offensive pinprick.
Yep.
And that, you know, that ruins everything as well.
Yeah.
All right. From Shauna Bass for 20. R&B is right. In the last 5 years, the only movie that left me feeling truly alive were Top Gun 2 and Godzilla -1. Fury Road was incredible, but Furiosa made me feel nothing. Empty movie with no character resonance. All right. From Michael Nemo again for 5. Thank you. We can say that we're tired of the same old movies and franchises over and over again, but then we get Godzilla -1. So what the hell?
Well, it's funny that movie came from the land of anime as well.
Yep.
You know that they the thing about anime is whether you like it or not, you're getting the unfettered creative output of artists and writers who are doing something unique that hasn't usually been seen before, that also contains both incredible amounts of emotion and pathos, but also action adventure. It's everything that Western entertainment has ceased to give young people.
Yeah, and also like we're talking about the fact that right now all we're getting are prequels and sequels and reboots and remakes. The Godzilla movies in Japan are not that. I mean, at one point they got a little out in the weeds. You know, you had Godzilla like helicopter kicking like frogs and stuff, and you're like, what is, you know? But like Godzilla -1 is a response to the commercialization that we see in America of these Godzilla films. It was like, yo, that's not what Godzilla is supposed to represent. And Godzilla -1 was like, this is Godzilla, and this is what he's supposed to represent to us. I mean, the scene where you see his atomic breath in an American film is like a exciting action sequence. In Godzilla -1, it's a horrible thing to remind you of what they had to go through. So that's why
Godzilla's a metaphor for the Godzilla movie before Godzilla -1, Shin Godzilla.
Yep. Shin Godzilla,
It focused as Godzilla and how would FEMA respond. They made a Godzilla where Godzilla was a stand-in for a natural disaster. And I thought that was a really interesting way to use Godzilla. Everything here is so pigeonholed. By the way, I wanted to bring up something to the panel. Have you guys heard about this kid, this Asian kid who's a Harvard student who made a short called Nothing Except Everything? So, okay, here there's a kid. I think it's a beautiful movie. It's a 12-minute short. He got a few festival bites. He said, screw it. I'm going to put it up on YouTube. He got millions of views, and Darren Aronofsky, the filmmaker, wrote him a letter and said, drop out of Harvard, make movies. And if you go watch this thing, it's called Nothing Except Everything. It's really well done. And to me, it represents where filmmaking can go in the YouTube era. You've got kids like the kids who made Talk to Me. They were cutting their teeth making internet videos, whether it was TikTok, whether it was Reels, Instagram Reels, whatever. And here's another example of where the new generation is coming from. And I do think we are on the cusp of what happened in Hollywood in the 60s, where until Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, that whole generation came in, where we've seen this dying era before. And I think we're on the verge of seeing a new cinema renaissance.
Yeah.
And it's coming from YouTube.
Agreed.
Yep.
So,
yeah. I'm just sad that Darren Aronofsky got an Asian to leave Harvard. You know how hard it is for us to get into Ivy League?
I don't think he left yet. I think he stayed there. But that's what he wrote. I don't think that I just seen him. He's just let's just call him a filmmaker.
Yeah,
a great.
I'm just saying it's so hard for us to get into Ivy League schools that if you get in,
well, now they're keeping you out.
Yeah,
those quotas, man.
I know. For Josh L for $9.99, thank you. Wasn't that long ago? It wasn't that long ago where creativity was still alive in Hollywood. Early 2017 was my big movie going phase, and saw The Founder, Spirit, Get Out, John Wick 2, Logan, Kong Skull Island, amongst others. Yeah, I mean the strike was devastating, and we're feeling it right now. And plus something happened just after 2016 that kind of ruined everything for Hollywood as well. All right. From Konshu66 for $13.99 Canadian. Dead Poet Society is one of the movies that left me speechless. I was 16 when it came out. Still love the brilliant story. We need more of this.
Exactly.
Yeah. I interviewed the screenwriter for Dead Poet Society, and he talked about how hard it was to make that movie. And there was a little Hollywood bargaining going on to get it ultimately made. Let's see, Jason Weber for $5 Australian. George Lucas, if you do not have a good story and relatable characters, all you have are pretty visuals. Oh, that's what he said. Yeah. In fact, let's talk
not even
about
that these days.
In fact, let's talk about pretty visuals with the upcoming Acolyte, which comes tomorrow. Just to let you know, Chris and I will be reviewing the Acolyte tomorrow morning at 8:45 when the embargo lifts.
I'm
I
so
can't wait for
excited.
the third episode to come out. You
I'm
guys are
so
gonna be
excited for your review.
Yeah. All right. So with that, let's. Sorry, I'm trying to find the right button here.
We believe in you. It's okay.
I
You
know.
got
Here we
this.
go. Let's kick off the Acolyte. And that little.
Particularly, I hope that they.
Okay, here we go.
이 날이 왔구나라는 생각이 들고요. 너무 긴장되고 너무 기쁘고.
I'm just excited for the group of people that aren't fans yet, because this is a great starting point for people to really enjoy the Star Wars universe.
Get drawn in by the story, love the characters, and stay with that episode per episode. The way this show unfolds is so shocking.
What I'm most excited for fans to discover is probably the various fighting styles that are in the show. We took a lot of inspiration from the levity and the fast-paced nature of the fighting sequences in the prequels, particularly.
I hope that they love the journey and the story, the action.
A mix with the mysterious suspense and the thriller aspect of the show. The action is a very driving force of the show.
Leslie builds humans and species that are so well-rounded, vast, and dynamic.
Leslie, has made something incredible. I think it's a masterpiece, and I think the storytelling is masterful. All the different storylines and the twists and turns.
미스터리 서스펜스 장르를 굉장히 잘 살렸다라는 것이 아주 포인트 중에 재미적인 포인트 중에 하나가 아닐까 생각하고.
How much heart it has, the storylines that it explores that are so relatable.
I'm so excited for people to just get into the story and go discovering the mystery along with us, with the characters.
This is my dream. I've been waiting for it ever since I was 7 years old, and I'm so happy I'm living this moment.
Many have said that this is the golden era of the Jedi, and I think Leslie really captured that.
Just how fun these characters are and how much they really continue the Star Wars legacy and yet provide an opportunity to see it from a whole new perspective.
The premiere on Disney Plus can't come soon enough, because I think that they're going to really feel transported back to the first time they watched Star Wars with what we've created.
Really stunned to see all the fans that are out here and all of the Star Wars costumes.
Leslie made such a beautiful personal story. Anyone can grasp onto, whether they've watched Star Wars a million times or never watched anything. So I'm excited for people to just get introduced to a new, really great story.
The more these universes get expanded, the more energy that goes out, the more positivity goes out. It's just lovely.
To see a different part of the universe, a different time, and a bunch of new Jedis, super stoked.
I am actually looking forward to seeing the martial arts, get down with the lightsabers and all the other empty hand stuff.
It's the most meaningful thing to be able to see everybody and celebrate this crew.
We just love Star Wars so much, and we hope that all the fans love it.
And I hope that the people who invest in it will feel as satisfied as I do having made it.
I'm just really excited. I'm really happy.
That's not a word. That's how I feel though.
Okay, all right. I'm suffering from PTSD right now.
I didn't believe not one person who said that they are a fan of the franchise. I didn't believe one.
Yeah.
And why power
were little
vibes.
girls playing young May? That's my question. Yeah.
The child labor
so-
laws?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean they're both playing the same
screen.
character. I don't understand that.
She's great.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
So yeah,
The scream.
I'll just say, wow. To know
Well,
what
Alan,
they're
you're the only
talking
one who
about.
has seen it, so
Yeah. And I can't say anything about it. But give me your reactions. How excited are you for the series that is going to save Star Wars?
I'm so
It's cringe.
excited.
It's
I've never been this excited about anything in my life ever.
can't you tell by our faces?
Yeah. It brings me back to the birth of my first child. I'm so excited. I've never been it already reminds me of the first time I watched Star Wars.
I've never felt more seen. That was
Yeah.
so great.
I feel so represented. They had Jar Jar Binks there. That was pretty exciting. Everybody remembers how much we love Jar Jar Binks. Any chance I get to be reminded of Jar Jar Binks existing in Star Wars. I know that they're doing it right. Yeah. Yep.
And Ezra, Space Jesus was there too. So,
and let's just say that 5 of the 6 of us here are represented in this show.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So mission accomplished.
So excited. So
they did it.
We
did it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like this is Star Wars has been long dead, but for me, and I feel like this is revisiting the grave and just reopening old wounds. It's what I feel. It's just every time something new is announced, which is a lot. There's a lot of announcements. We'll see what happens, but and this is just another thing that I feel is just continues to dismantle and bastardize George Lucas's mythology. No, because no matter what they say, I've heard this before. I've heard this exact press junket before, almost word for word with Ahsoka, with the Mandalorian, Obi-Wan. I've heard everything word for word almost. It's just the same exact talking points.
Yep.
And this is just going to continue to dismantle more and bastardize more of George Lucas's mythology that was carefully crafted over decades. And they're just taking it, twisting it, and trying to pass it off as their own creativity, their own story, which is, it's just feeding off of other creatives and just twisting it into their own vision of Star Wars. And it's sad, but
It feels like this is going to be the biggest departure from George Lucas, in my opinion. This is going to be the one that's departed the furthest from what George was given. And I agree 100% that all they're doing is just piggybacking. Like the story, I wonder if these stories would stand on their own outside of this franchise, whatever story it is that they're telling. Would anybody care about this if it wasn't Star Wars, if it wasn't attached to Star Wars? It doesn't feel like something that I would watch if I was just, on the outside saying, okay, is this a show that I'm interested in just based on the trailers and things that I'm seeing without the Star Wars label? It doesn't feel like it. But mainly, again, it just feels like George's, and it's not coincidental. I don't think that George came out ahead of this and said, oh, nobody understands Star Wars. Apparently, I think that this guy probably had like a sneak peek to whatever the Acolyte is showing, because it just so happens that right before this, he came out and said, I don't think anybody understands the Force. They've completely departed from what I've done. All of my ideas regarding Star Wars have been lost since Disney took over. I don't think that's coincidental. So yeah, I don't think this.
That it was always diverse and.
Yeah, right. Yeah. He said that it's always been diverse, and everything that George created, has held up over time. Versus the stuff that we've gotten from Disney, it seems like it's like you forget about it as soon as you watch it. It's just so forgettable. So I'm not looking forward to it, but I will watch it, obviously, because I have to cover it. But I'm not looking forward to this. I don't think this is going to be good. But I do believe in giving things a fair shot. So I will walk in with an open mind. But
yeah, like I'm not going to.
Some of these things, it's really hard to walk in with an open mind after seeing some of the stuff that we've been seeing.
I mean, I made a vow a long time ago that I'm not going to shit on something until I actually watch it or see it.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
Well,
I can assume, but I'm not going to judge it yet, right? Because I was wrong about X-Men '97. I thought it was going to be garbage, and it turned out to be a great show, right? I stand on that. It's a great show. So I'll wait. I'm going to go into it with an open mind, and if the story is there, okay, I'll give it its credit, right? I just think the way they're going about promoting this, though, is they're not doing themselves any favors, right? They're not making it about the story. They're not making it about the characters, right? And they have to know that they're already pushing people away just by doing that. They have to know that.
Yeah.
Well,
I used to be optimistic. I used to be, let me wait and see when it comes out. But then we've had like project after project, like Amazon's Rings of Power, who right up until almost it premiered, oh, we don't have the rights to Tolkien stories for this particular age. So here you go. So when they finally revealed that, I'm like, well, what are we getting if not Tolkien's own stories? And yeah, it was just fan fiction is what it turned out to be, because they didn't have the rights to tell his stories. So yes, my optimism just tanked after that. And like, okay, well, if it's not who actually wrote it. If it's not the stories, if it's not going to be the thing that I wanted, then what's the point? What are we even doing? And for a long time, this has been the same thing with Star Wars, is that it's been a systematic dismantling of the lore that's been crafted over decades. And I think for me, the final nail in the coffin was when they redid the official Star Wars timeline at some Star Wars celebration thing. And the new Jedi Order is now Rey's Jedi Order. And it wasn't enough to just see Han, Luke, and Leia killed before our very eyes systematically, as well as bastardized. Now they're taking their stories that were written years ago by other people and just reformatting it and twisting it for the new characters, for Disney's characters. And I just can't. Since then, you don't deserve my optimism. You have to earn it, and they haven't earned it. This is, in my mind.
Another thing that's odd, I think, about the whole where Star Wars has gone since the original film came out in 1977 is people forget that Star Wars wasn't just about Jedi and Sith. You know, it had another element, which was there was this galactic conflict between an empire and a rebellion. And George, when he goes back and talks about the Ewoks, he was talking about Vietnam. You know, he was talking a lot about the mystical fantasy element of Star Wars has taken front and center. Andor was a shift back to the wars part of Star Wars. But now it's all of these people who didn't create Star Wars have injected it more and more with all this fantastical stuff that kind of isn't really a part of that universe. And this is like leaning heavily into the Jedi and the Force. And okay, if you want to go that way, why aren't you doing what Lucas did, which was he was looking into Japan and the works of Kurosawa and the Code of the Bushido and all of those things. And it's like someone said earlier, what is this story actually about? Okay, you've got the Jedi and the Sith, but every story has something else going on. I mean, Star Wars is a coming-of-age story. You know, it's about a kid who wants to leave the farm, literally. And Han Solo, like I've always said, you've got a farmer, a truck driver, a bootlegger. Han Solo's driving an 18-wheeler and smuggling moonshine across state lines. That's what he does. He works for a gangster. You know, it's like a 30s story transposed into space where you've got a farmer from the Dust Bowl, you know, eking out a meager living, literally farming moisture out of thin air using evaporators. And he wants to leave the home because there's nothing else for him. And Star Wars has completely abandoned the idea of the every person. Han and Luke are everybody. Now it's only about Star Wars is only about the Jedi. And where are the normal people? Where's the everyday person that gets caught up in this? Where is the audience's proxy? In Star Wars, Han and Luke were the audience. We could immediately identify and Princess Leia, she was a badass. She's stealing plans right underneath her ships being invaded. She stands up to Vader. She stands up to Tarkin. She lies to them. You know, she gives it back as good as she gets it. I mean, and that was in 1977. Star Wars has always had strong female characters embodied in Princess Leia, but we don't see that anymore. Like it's almost like look, every franchise should go back to the beginning and understand all these new creators should learn the basics of these franchises and figure out what is it that these all had in them that has made them endure for all of this time. Rather than don't try and take a franchise and make it of today. You can make it relevant through the stories that you tell, but you can't fundamentally alter the foundational aspects of an IP and try and make it appeal to people, because you will fail every single time.
Yep. That's exactly what they've been doing. You hit the nail on the head. It's like, where is the connecting point for me as an audience member? Who am I connecting to? Is it just Jedi? Is that who I'm connecting to? Or is it a Sith Lord with, you know, it's like, I need to connect to something on a grassroots level, you know, and that's what Andor gave us. They gave us just regular run-of-the-mill people that I could connect to. And that's one of the main reasons why I like that show so much, is because I felt that connection. But you don't get that when all they care about is, well, we just got to push the Jedi because that's what everybody wanted. People said Andor was bad because it didn't have Jedi in it. So let's, you know, it's like, come on.
Well, Andor went in one direction. I loved Andor, but it went too far in one direction. Although I will say Luthen gives the greatest Star Wars speech of all time.
Oh God, yeah.
You know, I'm fighting for a sunset I'll never see.
Man, I mean,
sunrise I'll never see.
This is what Star Wars is missing: is people that connect to the original trilogy, the original franchise, what made it great to begin with. There's so much that you could tap into that is not being, they're doing it a disservice because they're just surface level with everything and they're not going deep enough. Like you said, George Lucas was going deep and he was tapping into mysteries that, affect humanity across the globe. And that's why Star Wars became the mythology of the 80s and the 90s. And that's why everybody rocked with it, because it spoke to us. This is just content. I'm sorry. It's just content. That's what it feels like anyway. That's what it feels like we're going to be getting. So it's just not hitting with people. And that's why, in my opinion, Star Wars is just kind of falling off. The people that are making Star Wars really don't understand Star Wars. They don't know how to make this franchise appeal to, new viewers. And those of us who rocked with it long time ago, back in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, we're kind of like, well, I mean, this really doesn't do it for me. So, what else is out there? And we so many people have already tuned out. And, this doesn't feel like this is going to bring any of those people back.
But also, what happened? What happened to just telling a story of good and evil? Right?
Yeah.
Right.
They try to overcomplicate these tones, right? It's like, oh, we have to feel for the Sith. They're the real victims in all this, right? The Jedis are really the puppet masters. And what happened to just a story about good versus evil, right? Not everything is gray, right? Like I know you want to make complicated characters, but guess what? You could do that and still keep the theme of good versus evil.
Yeah, but good versus evil is so 2015. Now it's no longer about good and evil. It's about power and who holds it. So,
and that's really
good
what
guys
it
are
comes down
bad
to.
guys, and bad guys are misunderstood.
Yep.
Right.
And I feel like I hear the exact same talking points. Like Dave Filoni and Leslie Headland, their little snippet of conversation that Anakin didn't think he thought he was the hero or something like that. And I heard almost the exact same quote, almost word for word, from the new Adar of Rings of Power, that he thinks he's the hero in his own story, that he didn't do anything wrong. They're all just cut from the same cloth, and it's boring creatively. They're all just, Marvel too is guilty of the same thing, tearing down the heroes of the past, the Avengers, tearing them down, and that the bad guys that are coming up are really just good guys, are just misunderstood. It doesn't make for a compelling story. People like good versus evil. It always appeals to everybody. If you tell it well, it's great. And what they're trying to do can be done well. Like we've seen some like morally ambiguous stories, but done so much better, with so much more nuance and complexity, and just straight up entertaining stories. Like Breaking Bad or Dune is more like that kind of gray area for the good guys. So we've seen it done, but we've seen it done with such high level caliber storytelling. And they're all just like, it's just the way they're doing it. It's just the same, just surface level, boring way.
Because they think they're being edgy, right? They think that they're recreating the wheel, right? Like they think that they're doing something different by making everything gray, and there is no good and evil. There's just complicated people. No, Star Wars has always been a story about good versus evil.
Well, when your entire creative process is predicated on everything that's come before is problematic, and everything that's come before is skewed or looked at through the wrong lens, and I have to deconstruct what's come before and distance myself from it, then you look at Star Wars and you go, well, maybe the Sith were misunderstood. But I'm like, what was misunderstood about Palpatine? He was supposed to be the embodiment of evil. Like, like there was no, oh yeah, I'm a kind of a good guy. That's the thing about being a Sith, is they owned that they were bad guys. They knew it. They didn't care, because what they wanted power. And the Jedi were like, hey, like when Yoda talks to Luke about the Force and the light side of the Force, and it's like, we don't use it for attack. We're not trying to harm people. We're trying to like make this world a better place. We're trying to use it to enrich people's lives and help people that need help. Whereas Sith use it to harm people and use it to, it's like it's clearly laid out. in the blueprints of the franchise itself. And the thing is, and Nerd Cookies talked about this too, like we've had stories in the EU. We had Knights of the Republics 1 and 2. We had like different characters that we've watched explore different ideas and concept within Star Wars. But at the end of the day, it always comes down to good guy versus bad guy. The thing that's interesting
we were all there when Anakin blew up the Death Star.
Yes, that's true.
We were all.
And he raised the goblet of fire.
Yeah, he killed millions of people. Anakin killed millions of people on that Death Star.
He killed so many people on the Death Star. But see, even that kind of stuff, man. It's like you're trying to make the Death Star. You want us to sympathize with the Death Star, right? They just blew up a planet of billions of people. We're going to blow up other planets full of billions of people, but yet we have to feel right for the guys on the Death Star. We have to feel bad for them.
Yeah, free the Death Star.
They bought their tickets. They knew what they were getting in. They let them crash.
All right, let's go over some super chats. And I want to talk about a specific aspect of the Acolyte. But here we go. From Bruce Lee Roy Jenkins for 5. Alan, can you at least confirm that the Force is female? Prefer the company of women and drive a Subaru. That all happens in episode 3. I cannot wait for episode 3 to drop because the internet will implode upon itself. I'm just seeing it coming. I have visions of it. From Bush and Ryu Cat, member for 5 months. So they made the. Actually, I'm going to skip that one because we're going to go into that. We'll go back to it. I'll say that. From Rumble, from Caveat Ties for $1. I'll bet that. Thank you for that. I'll bet there will be an actual baby Yoda in the Acolyte. All right, maybe. Jason Webster for $5 Australian. Pigs in Space was even better than Disney Star Wars. Yeah, just saw Link Heartthrob, the Hogthrob the other day. Let's see, from Denenska for €5. Sorry, I can't read. If Morph being now gay and trying to slide it into Wolverine isn't going far for you, your tolerance to wokeness is far higher than mine. I missed that scene in X-Men 97.
Yeah, here's the thing. That never happened. Look, they didn't even focus on Morph's sexuality. I think people were kind of exaggerating about that. He had a crush on Wolverine. That's as far as they took it.
Yeah, and technically he didn't have a sexuality, so
right, because he's non-binary. There you go.
Yeah. Ozzy's Robots for 10. Disney has alienated 3 generations. Someone like me from the OG, an OG fan, my kid who loved the prequels, and soon my grandkids. As owner of a sci-fi museum with a multi-million-dollar collection, I have 0 Star Wars.
Wow.
Sad. Sadly. Chinatsky for $1.99. Like the Acolyte better when it was called Arcane. Lance,
that was actually a good show.
I'm so excited for Arcane season 2.
I am too. I can't wait.
Yeah. So there's good stuff out there. Just not in theaters. From Lance Goodthrust for $2. Did someone say research? This isn't the 90s, guys. Yeah. Researching things. Michael Nemo for 10. Star Wars, Star Trek, Who, and more have been culturally appropriated by a validity-seeking minority demographic with years of trauma to work through via representation. And I say this as an Latinx LGBT myself. Yeah. What'd you guys do? Samurai Smack for $5. Last one. The Star was the fantasy and the myth and the medieval and Shingaku era. I'm reading this wrong. The war was the reality of the situation and the conflict of the present day. Yeah, so there you go. I know I read that wrong, but there you go. Much wisdom in that. But I can say this about the Acolyte. There's at least one aspect that is going to bring us all together, and that is through its combat. And so here's a little piece that the fine people at Disney have put together about the exciting fighting that you're going to see in the Acolyte.
And action. If I had been told that I was going to fight Carrie-Anne Moss, I probably would have had a heart attack. Cut.
Nice. training for the Acolyte was really challenging. Today, I feel a tad like a truck hit me.
It was very important to me that the show feel visceral and that the fight sequences feel jaw-dropping.
There's very high energy, high octane stunt work. What they've done to create these fights is insane.
We took the heavy martial arts, the hand-to-hand combat, all the different styles, and mixed them together to build these sequences.
We use Taekwondo, karate, Krav Maga, Western boxing.
It is some of the craziest fights.
It's very powerful.
It's pretty special.
Whoops. I mean, can you feel it? Can you feel it?
This is so embarrassing.
I love that they did Taekwondo and karate to make force fu. Thank you very much for culturally appropriating and getting it wrong.
Folks, I have to bug out. I have a conference call I have to go to.
Okay. Thank you, Robert. Do you want to plug anything? Or,
no, just keep on the lookout for
anything for you?
Middle of producing our audio drama, True Noir, the assassination of Anton Cermak, with an all-star cast I'm very excited about. So we'll be crowdfunding it at the end of June, beginning of July, but it'll already be finished being made by then.
Awesome.
So
nice.
All right,
good to see you,
but,
man.
Thanks, Robert.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. Great conversation. I love coming here. These are great conversations. Thank you so much for having me, everybody, all of you.
See you, Rob.
Absolutely.
Beautiful
See you,
people.
Rob.
And now I don't know. Maybe you should get another white guy in here. I don't know.
I know. Well,
Or maybe you could,
maybe Gary's available.
yeah, you can think of me as I'm the first character to die right now.
yeah.
So
There you go.
but I love you all. I love you all. Hopefully I'll
Thanks,
see you next
Robert.
week or the week after.
See you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
I feel like they're just trying to convince people that those fight scenes were good. They were just trying to oh, it's so great. We got all of these fighting styles, and I feel so out of, my muscles are sore. Like, but what they're actually showing us doesn't align with what they're saying. It just looks so cheap. It looks so it's so high octane.
Well, Alan, you saw it. I know you can't say too much, but I mean, were the fight scenes good?
As good as Ahsoka.
Oh God.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hayden Christensen was the best part of that, and you could so tell that Rosario Dawson was having to slow down to keep up with him. It was very embarrassing.
Oh yeah, Hayden, he didn't miss a step, man. Like,
yeah.
No, you could tell he had to slow down so she could it's so embarrassing on so many levels.
Gone are the days where, because I mean, Carrie Ann Moss is part of that with The Matrix, where they spent 6 to 4 months before the movie even started production, learning how to do martial arts, learning how to do the stunt work, learning the choreography, and going, I'm going to be as good at this as I possibly can be. I mean, these Star Wars fights are we wanted the same energy as the prequels, but the prequels those fights were even nerfed. Hayden and those guys are on record as saying we could have gone way harder, and George kind of was like, yeah, let's slow it up a little bit. I mean, so even with that, but the idea that the interesting part of Star Wars is kung fu fighting, I'm like, what? Maybe you run into one Jedi, or maybe two Jedi that they utilize more fighting style like that or something. That's kind of interesting if you engage in there's a unique group that does this one thing. But now it's the idea of uniqueness in Star Wars is I have a lightsaber whip, or I have a lightsaber mace, and you're like, oh, okay, that's cool, I guess. That's your idea of interesting in Star Wars, is that kind of thing. And everybody's a kung fu fighter. It's it's weird.
Yeah, what's wrong with the Force? I don't understand why the Force is a problem. Why can't we just fight with the Force? Why?
Well, they did. They do this a lot.
Yeah. I mean, but to me, it's kind of pointless. I rather them use sabers and just fight with the sabers like we're used to, if that's what they're doing. I don't need the kung fu. I don't need them to do all of that nonsense. To me, I don't mind kung fu fighting. Don't get it twisted. But to me, that's not really Star Wars. Just give me the Force, have them throw some stuff. I don't understand the point of throwing knives and throwing stars or whatever this chick is throwing at people. When the lightsaber blocks that, It's going to send shards of metal off in every direction, probably right at the person using the saber to block it. So, I mean, it's dumb. It's dumb. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't seem like it belongs in Star Wars. It's just silly. I'd rather them just use the Force like it's always been used instead of trying to recreate the wheel at this point.
Well, every fighting sequence that I've seen, I feel no tension. I feel no drama. I don't feel like anyone's in any real danger. And I feel like it was a mistake. Well, first of all, I think the choreography it is not there as far as just the intensity of it. I just don't feel anything. But also, I just don't feel like this character is formidable. The one with the tiny little 2-inch Ginsu knives. I don't understand how this is supposed to be so intimidating. Maybe if she had samurai swords or something like that, maybe a weapon more intimidating, but her tiny little daggers, I'm just not feeling it. I'm not feeling any drama. I don't feel that anyone's in any danger. And I feel like it's actually, I think it's kind of sad that Carrie-Anne Moss is in this because I can't help but compare it to her scenes from The Matrix.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's be real about what this whole High Republic thing is, man. They've been fighting for this for years, man. They won't let it go. They wouldn't let it go. Disney or Lucasfilm has wanted the High Republic because that's their way of destroying everything that Lucas created. Yep. They could retcon everything that Lucas created with the High Republic, and that's why they have fought so hard to make this happen.
Yeah.
Dude, let me talk about the fighting style in here. The whole thing about combining styles, karate, taekwondo, Krav Maga. It's the whole idea. The reason why you have these different styles is because each form is a certain set of skills that you're taught in repetition. And then there's a certain philosophy behind those skills as to how you fight and how you subdue your opponent, how you overtake your opponent. And by combining it, you lose all that. And so now you have, and I think that's what we have here is this is all beautiful choreography, if you want to call it beautiful. But it's all just for visual sake. It's not fighting. And I'll always go back to one line in Iron Claw that applies to wrestling, but the point is you don't do a move just to do a move. You don't do a moonsault just to do a moonsault. These moves have to mean something. There has to be something, a reason you did that specific move, and how your opponent countered with their skill set of moves. And that's what makes fighting interesting. That's where you get a story told in these fights. And here, and this is the tradition of Disney Star Wars since the very beginning, this is all choreography. Two people stand on a stage and they do moves together, and they try to create these, these beautiful ballets of fights and action and stuff. And I find it insulting, and I find it quite bland and boring. The whole thing about Carrie-Anne Moss, just standing there and dodging, that reminds me a lot of Drunken Master style fighting, Drunken Master Kung Fu. Where, if you've seen the movies, Jackie Chan just gets drunk and then that's how he fights. And there's a beauty to that fighting. And there's a beauty in the way in which he dodges attacks and then overcomes his opponent doing that. But they're doing a copy of that, an imitation, a cosplay of that kind of fighting. And that's what I find insulting about Star Wars combat right now.
Well, cosplay, that's a good word for that.
Yeah. Well, it used to be, like when a lightsaber came out, somebody was probably gonna die
or lose.
That's just how it is. Or if you're in a world where you have a bunch of like monks that have the Force and lightsabers are walking around, and somebody shows up that doesn't have a lightsaber and wants to fight one of those guys, they either don't know what they're getting into or they've got something up their sleeve that you don't know about. That's an interesting concept. Like somebody rolls up on a Jedi and he goes like, "You're no match for me," and then they start throwing down, and the guy finds out, oh, this guy's here for a reason. There's ways to craft that, but once again, even like if you go to professional wrestling, for example, there's a story there. There's going to be a winner. There's going to be a loser. And the choreographed nature of their fight is just to express that story. But once again, this isn't what's happening. There's no story to these fights. It's how cool can we make this thing look for everybody? And that's really awesome. And look how flashy and cool it is. But at the end of the day, nobody's going to die. Nobody's getting really hurt. It's just whatever. You know, it's like if you have a character that wants to throw down with a Jedi and the Jedi's completely outclasses them and is better than them in every single way, you go, okay, what was the purpose of that? Why do that? Why not just force throw her into a wall and call it good?
If Carrie-Anne Moss dies to that lady with the Ginsu knives and Sabine survives a literal impalement by the lightsaber, I will riot.
But you know that's going to happen, right?
That couldn't.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that is what happened.
Reva did it twice.
Is she the one that's murdering all the Jedi with those tiny little knives? And we're supposed to believe that? Meanwhile, you also have people like Reva and others who have survived multiple impalements with the lightsaber.
Yeah, not only did Sabine survive, it took her a day to get over it.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me get you excited about the Acolyte. That sequence between Indira, Carrie-Anne Moss, and May, it's right up front, and it's over by the first 7 minutes of the show, and you will be emotionally overwhelmed by the outcome, and not in the right way.
Oh gosh,
I'll leave it there. You're in for it.
But yeah, like you said, it's using the combat as a means of telling a story is something that's out. It's just flashy. Let's make it look good. Let's make it look cool. And that's all they know, because these are not talented writers that understand how to write a story, how to craft a narrative, and every piece of the narrative means something. You know, they just want to make things look good. Like one of the things that came out of all of the before we got to this point of the Acolyte was that, we want to outdo the Duel of the Fates. You know, like that was a mission of theirs, is to outdo the Duel of the Fates. And I'm like, why is this even on your radar? Like, tell a good story and focus on that. Outduel the Duel of the Fates in like season 2 or 3 after you solidified that you know how to tell a story in the Star Wars universe. But right off the bat, that's what they're interested in.
And what they don't understand about what they don't understand about Duel of the Fates is that we were invested in Anakin and Obi-Wan.
Right.
So even if they copy Duel of the Fates, we don't care about these characters.
No.
Yeah.
So what does it matter?
So who cares? Right. Exactly.
It's like establish your own thing. The thing is, like, nope. Anybody that saw Phantom Menace, like, yeah, we had watched these Jedi do their thing. They had teased Darth Maul real quickly for like a moment. You know this guy's coming after them. When them doors open and he pulls that lightsaber out and the first sight ignites, you're like, all right, it's going down. And he's like, no, I got enough for the both of you. You're like, okay, never mind. It's really good. Like that, there was unprecedented. We had never seen anything like that again, because it was an interesting concept. But nowadays, once again, the idea that they walked away with was like, well, the more interesting a lightsaber is, the more interesting the fight is. No, it's not about that. It's about what is the purpose behind this. And the idea, the concept of somebody picking off Jedi and going, how are we not noticing? What is going on that we're not seeing this? That people are getting murdered, people are dropping these really powerful Jedi, and we can't seem to stop it, is an interesting concept on paper. But that's not what we're going to get. We know that, because they also don't want to leave anything unexplained. There's no mystery left to anything. And that was part of the beauties of Star Wars, is that the Force was very mysterious. Even when Yoda explains it, he's like, there's not really a way to it's in all of us and it's around us. Like, listen, the things we love about Star Wars are things that on paper kind of seem ridiculous, but like a puppet lifting an X-wing out of like the swamp, it's like a beautiful moment in cinema, like one of the most iconic scenes in all of cinema. We love it because what it represented was something beyond ourselves. We'd never seen anything like that. So instead of trying to beat that or do better than that, go, okay, what made this scene work, or what made this idea work? Why do people resonate with this? And then go, let's do more of that. Let's explore more of that idea. But that's not what they want to do. It's about I was
going to say, the thing that, just to Mike's point, the thing they didn't understand about it is the speech Yoda gives right before that. Size matters not, right? Said, look how small I am. Look how little I am. Do you think that, and he's like, no, this is the speech. This is the point, is that, and this is what I took away. That's one of my favorite scenes in all of cinema. And that's probably the reason I'm a Star Wars fan right now, is because of that scene. And it's like, no matter how small you are, no matter who you are, you can overcome your limitations, by training, by just, working hard, and just going after it. And Luke was just like, oh man, no, this is impossible. I can't do it. And Yoda's like, yeah, you don't believe in yourself. That's why you fail. And see, that's the kind of thing that they need to tap into. Little messages like that come in that little 7 or 8 minute sequence, believing in yourself. You can do whatever it is you need to do. These are the things that George Lucas was pushing, the mythology, the lessons that you can learn, that you can pass on to the next generation. That's what George Lucas was doing. It wasn't just flashy lightsaber fights. That's what these guys are doing. They're just doing flash and dash. They're not giving you the messages that George Lucas was giving us through Star Wars. That's not what they're interested in. They're just trying to capitalize off an IP and make content for people so that they can say, hey, we got Star Wars. Let's make another lightsaber, this, that, and the third. And it's like, no, nobody cares about this. Right? Yeah. We cared about those little lessons right there. Those little slow down moments where it's like, Luke's just staring at this lightsaber or this X-Wing just floating across the swamp. Like, wow, like, how come I couldn't do that? And then, he says, I don't believe it. That's why you fail. Yeah. And it's like, and it kind of something to us that we're not getting from Star Wars. Sorry, go ahead, Dante.
No, I was going to say, and to piggyback off what you're saying, DA, yeah, we were Luke at that moment, right? We felt like we were being taught, right? Just as Yoda was teaching Luke, right? Yeah. And again, that goes back to storytelling, man. These modern Star Wars shows, these movies, they've lost storytelling. They've lost lessons being learned, right? We felt like we were learning alongside of Luke. We felt like we were training alongside of Luke when he was with Yoda, right? We don't get that anymore. We don't feel that anymore, because it's not about that anymore. It's not about teaching and telling a good story. It's just about flashes, visuals.
Yeah. My favorite moments in Star Wars is the more like resonant emotional beats, like you were saying, of Yoda training Luke. That's one of my favorite scenes and all of that. Also, when Luke, Darth Vader is redeemed, it is those moments that you remember that really hit. And the lightsaber fights, that's icing on the cake. That is just that's what it should be, and that's why just everything worked.
Yeah.
Let me the moment in Duel of Fates that I remember, excluding the ending, was that moment when Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Maul are separated by I forget what the room is, but they're in the middle of the fight and they can't fight, and so they're
the shield
standing there just staring at each other for like 30 seconds, and the tension that builds up, because you know those doors are going to open at any moment, and this fight is going to continue. It's a great moment in fighting that involved no fighting whatsoever.
Yeah, well, some of the best parts about choreography is crafting, if there's a break, what does that break feel like? How can we make this moment breathe for a second to give the audience a second to process what's happening? And in that moment too, we get characterizations. We have Maul pacing angrily because he wants to keep going. We have Qui-Gon kneeling and attuning to the Force, and we have Obi-Wan who's actually mirroring Maul. He's kind of impatient. He's ready to go. It's a lot of characterization and all of those things. Some people miss that, and that's the beauty of movies. So I don't mean that as a criticism. It's a good thing that we don't notice it. But as a filmmaker, you look back on that and you go, that's all intentional. They thought about that. They're like, this, you need to do this. This is what's going to communicate this to the audience. It's going to characterize your characters more. You're going to feel more for Qui-Gon when he dies, because he's not somebody he's not a fighter. He's not just out here trying to kill Maul. It's an interesting thing and interesting dynamics and stuff like that. And all of that is missing because they're like, how cool can we make this look, or how flashy can we make this look? And even
flew up into the air and spun. Ooh.
Yeah, you're like, wow. Even to an extent, some of the prequels sometimes suffered from that. Not all the time, because I do think the prequels are a lot better examples of really good choreography, like specifically like the second two, because there's a lot of fighting in those. But even with that, there was still consequences to the fights. At the end of that fight, something was going to happen. You know, the last duel between Obi-Wan and Anakin is insane. There's a lot of choreography, a lot of kicking and throwing and spinning and dancing. At the end of the fight, you know something's going to happen to one of these guys. You don't really know how it's going to go.
There's great intention on both fighters in that.
Yeah.
You know, one had to survive and one had to lose.
Yeah.
And and you just really felt that. All right, we're gonna move on because I got another video I want to show. But from Bush and Ryu Cat member for 5 months, thank you. So they made Force Fu, Jedi Fu, and Sith the Sith assassins. Okay, yeah. I mean, how's that not cultural appropriation? I don't understand. Yeah. JJKK for a member for 3 months. You know what? The martial arts choreography does look better. Nothing amazing, still subpar. But better than the other recent Disney Star Wars. I will tell you this about the Acolyte. When it comes to production values and when it comes to looking like a Star Wars thing, I will say that first is Mando Season 1, and then it's a tie for second, Andor and the Acolyte. The Acolyte at least looks like a good Star Wars. Yeah, it certainly looks better than Obi-Wan. And
Obi-Wan.
Yeah, I mean, compared to Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, this show feels Star Wars. But again, we're comparing piles of turds here. All right, from Rumble, caveat ties 50 for $1. Where's the hair? Where was the hair pulling? Yeah, I mean that's a new dynamic the women could have brought to lightsaber fighting. It's not that serious for 10. I'm an OT and PT fan. I am completely apathetic toward Disney and have no inherent interest in the Acolyte. However, I'm interested in all your reactions to it. Yeah, wait till next Tuesday. Fan art exhibit, 5 Australian. Thank you. The creatives hired to work on Star Wars should understand more than just original films. They should understand the films that inspired it. Absolutely. You should understand basic storytelling, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Samurai Smack for 5. A nitpick from a martial artist. A samurai sword is called a katana. Yeah, come on, people. Here's how you pronounce it. Katana. Katana. Yeah, I'm saying it right, I think. All right. Yeah, so guys, make note. And here, let's get into this fascinating piece of a video. Whoops, I'm sorry. Let me unmute it.
Ready? Yeah. Star Wars has always been a big part of my life. I've always loved spending time in these universes, and the concepts that Star Wars explores feel like some of the most vital ones.
Someone is killing Jedi. It doesn't make sense.
Hi. How are you?
Come and sit.
Come and sit.
So I'm pretty honored to be a part of something that's impacted so many people. And my kids are really excited about it.
And my husband is too. What was your favorite scene to film?
I loved the action sequence. The fight that I have with Amandala.
Your power and your use of the Force in the fight is like, it's a whole other character. It adds so much to it. You are a strong, wise Jedi.
I freaked out every time I got on a ship. You know?
Okay, why?
Because I was on a ship. Oh my God, I'm on a Star Wars ship, and now I get to beep, bop, boop, bop, beep, boop, boop, press the button.
Yes, all the buttons.
Turn it,
all the screens.
all at once.
Yes.
Because that's what good pilots do.
I think the greatest part about Star Wars is that they have incredible characters, and you know, every generation just sees themselves in them.
It's really nice to be a part of that. It was insane. It's Star Wars.
I don't know if you caught this. I just want to show it to you. Okay, this segment here with the green girl. Yeah, I don't know if you caught that, but as she's walking through the automatic doors, she's doing this. Have you ever gone to the supermarket and done that with the automatic doors?
Yeah, when I was 10, I did that.
Yeah, just saying.
I did it until my kids got embarrassed of me doing it in the supermarket. So, like, Dad, stop! I'm like, I did that.
The door's just gonna open if you walk through it. You don't need to. You don't need to do that. Yes, and she did say beat Babu, but the question I want to bring up to you is it's the things they said in this press tour. There's, I don't know. I get it. When you do a press tour, you're supposed to hype everything. Everything's greater, the greatest thing you've ever done. This is the greatest story ever told. But it just starts to feel disingenuous over time. Yeah. And I think, Elaine, you mentioned it that they're basically taking the script from Ahsoka and Obi-Wan and giving it to the actors here. But the reason I bring this up is I got into this argument with a friend of mine who this was about Marvel, but I said that 10-year-old me would not be impressed with current day Marvel. And he says, no, your 10-year-old would be impressed with it because it's current and it looks cool and that you're tapping into nostalgia. And so that got me in this war between old versus new and how great we had it as old. And he's telling me no, because as you're a kid, you don't know old. And so you're going to think this stuff is cool. What do you think? Are we just old guys with eating sour grapes? Or is there some kind of legitimacy to the, maybe the fact that we just don't understand modern storytelling?
I think if these movies, if these shows were their own thing, maybe, right? But what you're doing is you're taking a franchise that everybody knows, and you're purposely, for whatever reason, trying to destroy what was originally created, right? Like if this was what was his own thing and it was his own IP, and who knows? And again, I haven't seen the Acolyte, so just on that, I'm not going to speak on the Acolyte, right? Obi-Wan sucked. Ahsoka sucked just on the film level, right? So Andor was good. So I think that defeats that argument because Andor is new, right? Rogue One was new, and I liked both of those.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, kids like Andor though. I think that was for. I feel like they're compartmentalizing their fan base. That every entry isn't to appeal to the entire fan base. It's just to appeal to like certain types of fans, like prequel fans or OT fans or sequel fans, and I feel like Andor was in a very specific type of fan that could possibly from the OT, but that wanted to see more of that time frame, who liked Rogue One. So that is probably Rogue One fans. But I feel like Rogue One fans and Andor fans don't really translate over to Obi-Wan series fans.
No, and you're right.
It's completely different. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why they try to like separate out the fan base, and none of these things feel like they connect to each other. This doesn't feel like it connects really to Andor. Andor just seems like its own thing entirely, a completely different tone, a completely different feel, and the way it looks is different. Then when you look at Obi-Wan, it looks so cheap. It looks so poorly made, and the story is just not complex. It's not, you can't sink your teeth into it, in that way. Completely different tone, and it just doesn't fit together. It's just none of these things feel like they're a part of the same universe, and I feel like this is just another thing. It doesn't.
Well, here's the question: do young people like the recent Star Wars? I mean, Alan, you have kids. I don't. I don't know what these young kids are watching. Are young kids like clamoring for new Star Wars?
I mean, look, my daughter is in a small subsection of the teen market, but I can tell you that she has zero interest in Star Wars. And the one friend that she has that is into Star Wars, he is way into Star Wars and thinks Disney Star Wars sucks. And they're the same age.
Well, like
they're in their teens.
My kids are younger, and they really like The Mandalorian, at least season 1, and then season 2, and then they got really bored with it, and they just stopped wanting to watch it. They're like, whatever. Like my daughter was excited about Ahsoka Tano. She's like, oh, she's kind of a cool character. I like this. She's interesting for a little bit, and then she kind of got bored. Like when I told her she's gonna get her own series, she's like, okay, But if I go back and put on the prequels, if I go back and put on the original trilogy, my kids will walk into the room and maybe they'll be like, oh, Dad's watching Star Wars again. But a lot of times they end up on the couch watching it with me. And they enjoy it for what it is, It's just something about it. But, the other part is, Alan, now I don't know for sure, but I read that every episode's like, what, half an hour?
Roughly, yes. 30 minutes.
With credits.
So you have eight episodes that are about half an hour, and that's including, I'm guessing, credits and also including probably the intro. These you barely have 4 hours of storytelling here. Like, so what is there to actually even enjoy about this stuff? Like, what is there to like, it would be one thing if it was like these really interesting self-contained, like if The Mandalorian was a self-contained, like episodic story that maybe had an overarching narrative. You could be like, oh, that's kind of an interesting concept. I'm just kind of enjoying it for what it is. But these things are all implied to have these bigger stories and these bigger narratives and kind of follow these serialized content. But there's barely anything in them. There's nothing going on. There's really not much. And if people are telling, because one thing we saw with Obi-Wan, there's filler content in Obi-Wan.
Yeah. Man, I was about to just say that, man. Like Ahsoka was all filler. It felt like that show should have been like maybe 3 or 4 episodes that mattered. And then the other 4 episodes was just full of filler. There was nothing to it. And I have a feeling that's what we're going to get here as well. But to answer the question regarding the kids, my kids are all in their 20s. Not one of my kids cares about Star Wars. Not a single one of them. And they all grew up with me pushing Star Wars on them. And they just never rocked with it. Say, hey, let's go see the the Force Awakens. And we all went to see it. And they sat in the theaters. And then I would show them the Clone Wars. And I would show them all of these various shows. And yeah, all right. Yeah, hey, Dad, let's go watch Avatar. Like Avatar was their thing, man. They loved the Avatar: The Last Airbender. So that was their thing. And then slowly but surely it just became anime because that's what their friends were watching. And so their friends ain't watching it. Nobody else, they're not going to watch it on their own. They're going to watch what their own, peer group is watching. And so, nobody was really rocking with anime. I mean, with Star Wars, even from that standpoint. I think people that grew up with the prequels, I think they, in the Clone Wars, I think they're still solid. But like once you get into the sequel era, and my kids would have been, mostly teenagers or getting close to the teenage years during the sequel era. Yeah, they tapped out. They were done.
Yeah,
there was nothing that was exciting for them.
There's no shortage of entertainment for kids and access to it. And like you're saying, like anime, it was a huge thing in their lives. I don't know if they liked the live action One Piece. I loved the live action One Piece that was coming out, I think, at the same time as Ahsoka. And it succeeded in all the ways that Ahsoka and Star Wars itself should have. I was completely new to that universe too. So it was completely accessible, and with which this should be. It should be accessible to everybody, and great characters. I just immediately felt immersed into this world. The friendships, the character development felt just satisfying and earned. And I'm so excited for, the future of that. And
see what it do. It made you a fan, right? It built a new fan, created a new fan for this particular franchise. That's what Star Wars isn't doing. They're not creating new fans. I don't know how many fans they created off of Ahsoka. I doubt they created any. It seems like that show was made specifically for people that like Rebels, and that's it. Or maybe some Clone Wars, but it was pretty much for those people that wanted to see a live action Ahsoka, a live action Ezra, a live action Sabine, a live action Hera, a live action Chopper. It seemed like that's what that show was made for. And, Dave Filoni got his wish. He made the show, but I don't know if they created any new fans, and they got people that are looking forward to season 2 and season 3. Unlike One Piece. One Piece has people going back and watching the anime. They say, oh man, I want to chop in, get into this anime. This anime sounds awesome. I want to go and watch that. That's what One Piece live action did, And the reason that it worked is because Eiichiro Oda was on point the whole way. He didn't let them deviate. No. If it wasn't working for Eiichiro Oda, he was like, it's out. You can't do it. All right. And so they stuck to the script, and they brought the original creator on board, And that's the reason why One Piece live action worked. And, again, George, I don't know where George has been when it comes to the Acolyte and Ahsoka and all of these other shows, but I don't think he's been on set. He hasn't been guiding these guys. Like, wait, no. That's not the Force. Oh, you guys don't seem to understand the Force. He's not doing that. And so because George is not involved, the original creator is not involved. They've lost track.
Well, first of all, what's George doing? He's swimming in money right now.
Yeah,
he's been swimming in money for a very long time. The other thing is, I can tell you, kids. I don't know kids who like remakes of what their parents watched. The stuff that my daughter and her friends watch, it's all original stuff. Has Been Hotel has been the thing they've been talking about all year, and that's all brand new. They're watching the original Haiku. They're watching the original My Hero Academia. They don't care. One Piece is the anomaly because it was done well, and that's what they're into. Before we're running out of time, and I want to do this last one. Elaine, you talked about it, but it's worth watching. But this amazing conversation. It's only 2.5 minutes between the amazing Dave Filoni and Leslie Headland. Here we go. Whoops.
That sounds good.
That does sound good. Let's do it. Tell me about the Acolyte.
I'm sorry, just you asking me that question is making me cry.
Is it? That's all right.
Yeah.
It is a big deal to a lot of people. It affects people in different ways, and this is your story, so.
What I was interested in examining were the Sith. The master-apprentice dynamic. If the apprentice is craving the master's power, then at some point he must recruit his apprentice to overthrow the master. Yeah. And that is the Acolyte.
Right.
Who trained you? You don't wake up thinking you're evil or that you're the bad guy, as explored by George's Anakin.
Yeah, I don't think Anakin ever thinks he becomes evil.
I agree. And I think a lot of the characters in the Acolyte have to convince themselves that they are
doing the right thing.
They're doing the right thing.
This is the Clone Wars.
Yeah, no kidding.
Ahsoka was such an interesting character to me.
When we started, we had it very much a shell shock moment for her that she was out of her depth. And I'll never forget it. George watching it and saying, you guys are taking this a bit too seriously. He went on to explain that, even at a young age, she's not out of her depth for any of this.
I had a similar experience with the character Jackie. There was a note from somebody that was, wouldn't she be scared on her first mission? And I remember you telling me about that story.
Jedi training has to be valuable. It prepares them for the galaxy.
Do or do not.
Do or do not, there's no try. That's if you're trying, you're not actually doing it.
I had to do that with Acolyte, for sure. My agreement with myself was whenever it overwhelms you that you're doing your dream, you just have to do it. Honestly, the times that I felt the most worried was not the special effects, the fighting choreography. It was the emotional stuff.
These things that George understood about filmmaking, understood about iconography, are things we still try to tap into.
It's the Western. It's the samurai film. It has to feel elevated, but it also has to feel like Star Wars. Basically, what George created, it's the North Star.
It's funny that she says George is the North Star.
Let me just say,
George comes out and says, y'all don't know Star Wars.
Yeah. It got lost somewhere.
Here's the thing. Here's one thing that stuck out to me in this interview. It's the overuse of the word I or my. This comes off so narcissistic. There's no humility here. I made this promise to myself. I put this into my story. There's just no humility whatsoever in this in Star Wars nowadays. And by the way, this is the hands in which Star Wars now lay. So.
And I love how she's talking about, I'm examining the Sith and the master apprentice dynamic that like it hasn't been done before and done in a way it's just more creative and more awesome way countless times before, actually. And Darth Bane and the whole Old Republic era that is very familiar in fans' minds, and she's just saying it like she's touting new territory or breaking new ground. Like, you're just reformatting what previous creators have already done in a much better and more creative and entertaining way, and you're just like putting your own spin on it.
But that's the thing. They don't acknowledge the EU. They don't acknowledge the Old Republic games. They don't acknowledge anything that came before Disney.
They might not even know about it, to be
they
honest.
pretend that it doesn't exist. We know it
because here's the thing: if Disney runs Star Wars like they run Marvel, they're probably telling them not to read or watch any of the EU stuff, because that's what they tell all the people that join Marvel. Don't read about your character. Don't read the comic books. Don't go back looking up your character, anything like that. So it's like obvious, they're probably telling them, don't worry about the Old Republic. Don't worry about any of that stuff. And so these people really do think, I watched Star Wars, and then I realized no one's ever talked about what the Sith are going through. No one's ever deconstructed Star Wars. We've only ever seen Star Wars through the lens of a young white man. We've never seen any other characters in Star Wars doing anything. I've been in arguments with people that are Disney Star Wars fans that don't know some of the basic, popular characters from the EU. Don't know who Kyle Katarn is. You're like, what? They don't know a lot of this stuff. So all of it is through the lens of what they have in front of them, and Disney Star Wars is a shell of what Star Wars was, with hardly any of the depth, any of that stuff. So I honestly don't think they know. I think they have no clue exactly what they're talking about or what the source material is of and what they're drawing from.
Yeah. Well, I'll say they understand the narratives, but they don't understand the subtext. They don't understand what drove those narratives. The idea that Anakin didn't know he was evil. Well, Anakin turned into Darth Vader because he felt like the Jedi were holding him back. They felt like that at every turn, rather than becoming a great Jedi warrior, they suppressed him. They kept him from getting full training. They kept him from becoming a full Jedi, having to stay the Padawan of Obi-Wan. And it was the Emperor who was able to take that insecurity in Anakin and then turn him ultimately into Darth Vader. They just don't understand these, human nature and how you can insert that into the stories of the downfall of the great. And it's just all about the narratives, and that's what is the problem with Disney, Marvel, Star Wars. They don't understand subjects. They don't understand why people act the way they do. They just understand.
It's all very surface level. It's all very surface level. Everything they've done with Star Wars is very surface level, and that's the main issue. And that's why it doesn't feel like Star Wars. They don't understand what George's vision was. Sad, man. It's really sad. It's pathetic.
Yeah.
All I can tell you is no one's going to buy these toys.
I didn't even know that. I didn't even know there were toys available. And then I was like, are there really toys? I haven't seen any. And then I was like, oh yeah, they got toys out there. They're probably going to be on sale in a week because nobody's going to.
Well, they got toys of Reva that they can't sell. So
there you go.
Alan has one.
I have my Reva.
Hey, and how much you pay for that?
Out of the dollar bin at Walmart.
Yeah, it was the clearance shelves at Target.
That makes sense. What, $5?
No, I paid $9. I was afraid I wouldn't get one before that went to the garbage dump. So I need to pick one up.
You could have pulled it out of the garbage dump. It would have been just fine.
Right. All right. So so we gotta wrap things up. I'll say this. We'll get to the super chats in just a moment. But here's the thing that I will have everyone think about when they watch The Acolyte, especially this third episode. This third episode is going to be the lightning rod, and I can't wait for the world to see it.
Wait, how many episodes drop tomorrow?
There's 2 drop tomorrow. So next Tuesday.
Next week is the 3rd. Okay,
we gotta wait a whole week. All right.
Yeah, it's not worth spoiling it anyway. It's worth just you watching it and just taking it in.
Fair enough.
But what I would say is think about that moment that Return of the Jedi ended. Think about that moment when Revenge of the Sith ended, and how you felt about the Star Wars story that you had just seen in both of the 3 films. And then ask yourself the question, does where Disney Star Wars is today, is that the natural progression and evolution of the Star Wars story that it brought us to this point? And it's that question that I had to ask myself when I finally declared after watching the 3rd episode of The Acolyte that Star Wars is dead to me. That I can't I'm no longer a fan of Star Wars, and I'm
Yikes.
done. I mean, I'm gonna have to watch the rest of it for this, but it's Star Wars has passed me by. I'm just an old guy in the senior citizen home, and Star Wars just is not for me anymore. It's for I'll just say it. The Force is female. It's for women and it's for gay young men. And, and there you go. And that's fine.
Oof.
You can make Star Wars for those things. You can make Star Wars for women. You can make Star Wars for the LGBT community. I just hope that you're budgeting accordingly, and I hope they have enough money to make it profitable. And that's
like I said, man. They don't care about profit. It's about the message.
So
I don't think Disney Plus has made a profit, but now that they've merged with Hulu and ESPN, I don't know, that whole package was the only reason why they would make a profit at all. But yeah.
I mean, with the cost of these things, I don't understand how they could spend 180 million on this series.
750,000 per minute.
Yeah.
Yep.
And even
keep that in mind.
Yeah, Ahsoka was just as expensive. How are they making money? I don't understand it. How are they not going bankrupt? At some point, I have to believe there's loans that are going to be called in.
Well, they also are. You got to remember they're so big. They're profitable in other places.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're struggling now in the parks even, but they were.
Yeah.
And so they had a lot of money coming in from other places to kind of like shore up the leaking, spots. But as you can see, Star Wars isn't even profitable in their parks anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just acquire other production companies too. They don't really produce anything, but they acquire other property or other studios. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, that's 20th Century Fox, which they own. And also with Hulu, they're having shows like The Bear with their stupid little watermark on the trailer, Disney Plus, on the Bear trailer, which I love. It's a great show, but Disney had nothing to do with its production and its writing and it's creating it, but they've just bought the rights to air it. So it so annoys me when I see the Bear trailer for season 3 with the Disney Plus watermark on it.
Well, I'll tell you, nothing brought me more joy than seeing the Universal banner in front of the Muppets, the Muppet movie.
I keep asking the question: what's the breaking point? How much can they afford to lose? How much more can they afford to lose?
Yeah, or how much? I mean,
we'll find out.
Fans have clearly walked away from the parks, from movies, from television, and no one's seeing it. No one there is seeing it, I should say.
Will this be the backbreaker? Is this going to be the moment that they finally pull their heads out of their asses and say, "Okay, we got to get back to making great Star Wars"? You don't think so? This isn't the backbreaker.
No. I think that
finally get these guys right.
I think they keep pushing it.
Jack Black was, but
at some point they're going to have to either. I honestly think at some point Star Wars will be so unprofitable as a brand that they will stop trying to make Star Wars content. I fully see like in the next 5 years they're going to put Star Wars in a container and say we're just going to let it sleep because obviously people aren't liking it, aren't wanting it. I think this is their first foray into really their original content with Star Wars. I mean, everything else up till now has been prequels or sequels, with the exception of the High Republic stuff. But that's not profitable. Those nobody's reading those books. Nobody's reading those comics.
I see tons of new covers for the Expanded Universe Legends books now. I see a ton of that whenever I go in a bookstore. There's tons of that and very little Disney era stuff because that's what's selling. The EU is what's selling.
And what's wild about that is like. Real quick, that is with the EU stuff is like I know people that work with Disney or have friends that work with Disney. A lot of those guys that wrote that EU stuff, they're not getting paid for that stuff. Disney is trying to just like nickel and dime people everywhere because they aren't making a profit in Star Wars. Like their toys aren't selling, nothing. Like, and they keep coming out with gimmicky stuff to try and like drum things up, and they can't. There's just nothing selling in Star Wars right now. Go ahead.
Yeah. I will guarantee you the headline on Wednesday will be The Acolyte is the most watched Disney Plus series, and then some kind of qualifier. And I will say this: the more I've been saying, the more I've been talking about this third episode and just how much of a lightning rod it will be. I am doing Disney a favor because I think a lot of people are going to watch this third episode just to see how it all ended. The day Star Wars died, and so you're welcome, Disney. I'm glad to promote your show.
Alan, you did a better job than their marketing team did of selling this show.
Because I know more people who
Like
are
a car
who are gonna
crash,
see
can't
it
turn
just
away.
because.
Yeah, everybody likes. I was about to say that. Everybody likes a car crash. Everybody likes a train wreck. Let's go and watch it. So that's what we're going to
funeral
watch.
pyre.
Yeah, I mean, I part of me was like, am I just crazy? Maybe I'm overselling this. And I talked to Chris, and I was like, no, I feel pretty confident in what I'm saying here. So yeah, next Tuesday is gonna be amazing, and I'll be watching Inside Out too while that's going on. So here we go. Let's go to our chats here. From Rumble for $1. Caveat ties. My kids, including a 10-year-old, like pre-end game Marvel, but have no interest in current Marvel or Star Wars. Yeah, you're not the only one. Jean Hu for 742. I hate the reminder that this will be the first Star Wars that many young people will see. Yikes. Peter Garombe. I can't read. I need my glasses. For 5 Canadian, remind me, wasn't Vader aware of his actions? Isn't that why he tells Luke that it's too late for him in Return of the Jedi? Yeah, interesting.
Luke felt the conflict within him, but whatever.
Yeah.
He was never
TML
evil.
89, aka dislikes puns. For 20. Step 1, acquire valuable IP with proven customers. Step 2, cocaine party. Step 3, alter the IP's formula and defecate on naysayers. Step 4, am gonna be rich. Step 5, huh? Step 6, fail and Kurt Hollywood Hills Cobain impression. Ooh. Okay, there we go. And then also, and forgive the typos. I'm in line at Starbucks. Okay, you're forgiven. And again for 5. Hey, thank you so much. I disagree. I'm not saying it will be the breaking point, but we'll never see this kind of fear from KK or Foreheadland before it could cause movement. All right. So yeah, before we end, final thoughts. Dante, you're muted.
You muted, Dante.
You're not muted. You're muted.
My bad. No, I said I'm not looking forward to this, but I am going to watch it.
You're welcome, Disney.
I wasn't going to watch it, but I think Alan's convinced me to watch it. So
yeah.
Well, at least episode 3.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Specifically, I got to get to episode 3. I wasn't gonna, but now I kind of have to because I feel like he's built up episode 3 in my head. But listen, I don't say this lightly. I really, truly believe that Disney does not like Star Wars as a brand. I don't think they like their fans as a brand. For Kathleen Kennedy to make a statement like the reason that there's so much pushback against female characters is because it's a male-dominated brand.
Which it is.
When you say to your customer base in an interview that it is a male-dominated brand, and then you're writing stories and you're doing things that are antithetical to that, and then saying, well, if it means representation, I'm all for it, then you're saying, I don't care who is buying this. I don't care who the primary buyer and consumer of Star Wars is. We're going to make it something else. And remember, when Chris Gore said they were making it a girl brand, he got so much heat from people. He got a lot of support too, yes, but he got a lot of heat from people saying that. But what else is there to say? Unless they're specifically catering to non-binary people, like they're making Star Wars a girl brand, or they're trying, and it's not going.
Star Wars
well.
is a girl brand. Sorry to correct you there. It is a girl's brand.
Yeah, and it's like, and now the narrative is like, once again, you argue with people. You go, there have been female characters in Star Wars since the very beginning, always have been. And so where was the need for representation until now? Disney manufactured a crisis to push a narrative that is not working. People aren't buying it. So at some point they have it's going to be make or break. But I'm going to be honest with you. I think Star Wars is a dead brand. Even though they're making stuff, I think it's a dead brand. I think it's been dead for a hot minute. So.
Yeah, it's sitting at the bottom of the ocean right now. I've been saying that for I don't know how long. No. Star Wars is just not a brand that people care about. And, I'll watch The Acolyte. I'm definitely going to watch it. I'm going to check it out. And I'm going to be, as open-minded as I can possibly be. But at the end of the day, I just don't have a lot of hope. And I'm expecting it might actually work to its advantage, because I'm coming in with such low expectations that if it does anything right, I might actually say, okay, it did something right. But my expectations are at the bottom of the ocean right alongside this thing. So yeah, this franchise, unfortunately, I've always said this is the fandom's hill that I will die on. This is the fandom. This is the one. Okay. There's a lot of other fandoms that I love. This is the one that I will perish on that hill. And your episode 3 has got me nervous, man. I'm like, boy, is this it for me? It's over. It's over after this. Like,
yeah, Alan, you did a great job of selling it, man.
You did, man. Because now I'm like, I was
marketing this brand.
I don't even care about episode 1 and 2.
When I step out of Inside Out 2, the first place I'm going to is the internet, just to see what people are saying. Elaine, what are your final thoughts?
Well, I completely agree with the panel, and I feel in a especially acute just annoyance, because they keep touting this as, oh, this is for women now, and this is, I mean, they're not even subtle about it. This has always been male dominated, so we're going to appeal to the women now. So what you're basically saying is that you don't want to appeal to your existing fan base, one of the largest, most dedicated fan bases of all time. And it's bad business at the end of the day too. It's only used as a shield for criticism. Kathleen Kennedy knows she's doing a horrible job. She does not know how to be a creative visionary, of how to guide other creatives under George Lucas's existing mythology. So she uses these minorities as a shield for the oncoming criticism that she knows will come. She's already like, every time something new comes out, it's the same old story of, oh, well, men aren't going to like it, so they're racist and bigots or whatever. And I'm just sitting over here like, do you not know that we exist, that actually women and enjoyed Star Wars before? And I never felt gatekept out of this universe, that it was not accessible to me as a woman. I am a sci-fi nerd, and I loved it. I that's just my taste though. But for the majority of women and girls, it's just not their thing. It just is what it is. And the same thing goes for other way around. There's just things that appeal to the female demographic that men aren't going to like. It is what it is. You have to know what your fan base is. You have to know what they're going to like. And at the end of the day, it is your job to give the fans what they want. And it's just, so yes, I am a woman, but this isn't for me as a fan. It's not for me. But we'll see. I will see the car crash or the train wreck. I don't know if I'm going to see it when it first comes out. I'm just feeling like I've been so burned so many times. But yeah, like again, you were saying, like a car crash, you can't turn away. Let's see how bad this is. I didn't think it could get any worse at this point for me, but we'll see.
All right.
You're gonna break new ground of.
Thanks. All I can say is Disney, I got 4 new viewers to go see The Acolyte who weren't going to see it. So you're welcome. I did my job promoting your series. The other thing is, I'll end with this. Disney Star Wars is a girl's brand. 100% a girl's brand. And if you're going to call me a misogynist for saying that, I'll ask you this question. How is it a boy's brand? Yeah. How is your series? How is what Disney Star Wars is today appealing to boys? And if I'm wrong, answer that question, and I'll state I'm wrong. So there you go. Let's kick this thing off. Thanks to the what was close to 5,000 people watching us today. Thank you so much for being here. Also, thank you to Lord Thoth, who has been modding for us. Thanks to Atomic Lori, sorry, for producing behind the scenes, as well as Glanuccio for the great clips and just the hard work he puts into it. And to Chris Score, get better. And you'll soon figure out what happened to him. And just a reminder that tomorrow at 8:45 in the morning, Chris and I will be live here on Film Threat to give the official review for the Acolyte, and so stay tuned for that. I'm excited for it. And yeah, so with that, let's get out of here. If I can find the video. Yes, there we go.